Danielle, welcome back to your
Thank
second
you.
episode.
Thank you for having me.
And tell everybody, because you just, between last episode and this one, you've gotten married.
Yes, we got married and it was so special. And yeah, it really evolved and unfolded. We got engaged in February and we both were like, what are we waiting for? We're ready to do it and get married. And at first it was just going to be the two of us. And then we both felt, I think maybe me a little bit more at first, where both of our parents are very supportive. It's not like they weren't for any reason. And so we decided that we wanted to invite immediate family only. And so within like 4 weeks, we somehow, everyone came together. I had siblings that flew from Texas. Like everyone showed up and it was so special. And it was still very intimate and small, but I think it was like 25 people. Just our immediate family is that. So
Were
it was
you
still,
stressed at all?
oh, well, let's just talk about, I was very excited.
Yeah.
So I couldn't sleep for like the 3 days leading up. So I was like on 2 hours of sleep for 3 or 4 days. So I definitely felt like the excitement and anticipation of it. And there was definitely a level of stress, not in an intense way, but more, this turned into more than we thought, but in a good way. So yes, it was stress, but it wasn't like a negative stress.
I'm
So
just amazed because you told me that you planned it in 30 days. And I planned our wedding very quickly, but it was on Zoom. And so I probably took about 30 days. But when we decided, because like you, I mean, we waited, I don't know how long we waited in total being engaged, but like it was COVID and we wanted to get married. And I was like, I don't want to wait an extra year or two just because it's COVID. So we decided to do it on Zoom, but I was stressed enough just trying to plan a wedding that was taking place in our backyard. Like the flowers and all that. I was like, I don't know how I would manage this if this were a bigger thing. So I'm just impressed that you did like a whole in
the
person
whole,
thing with people in that short of a time.
yeah, me too, honestly, because at first it was not going to be that. And it just turned, and also I felt that the way that everything just like unfolded, where like everything was just like, yep, this private garden's available, less than a month's notice. Yes, like I ordered one dress on Amazon and it fit me and it was
Yeah, it was
fine.
beautiful. I wanted to tell you
Thank
that too.
you.
Yeah, the arms, like I loved
Isn't
the
it pretty with the little
yeah.
lace and the, yeah, it just, my sister actually, she was helping me look. As soon as she found out, she's like, "Do you need help? Let me help you find a dress." And she's so cute. She did my hair and makeup, and she was the one that found the Amazon link. So I was like, I don't know what I'd do without you, sis.
Oh,
So she found it, and I actually, well, I ordered two dresses, and the other one came from like a website, and it was the completely wrong dress, completely wrong size. And I was like, well, I guess the other one's gonna have to work. And it did. So it was just so comical in that sense where like, you know, we've been very intentional with our relationship, taking things slowly once we got more serious and really building a foundation. But once we were ready, we're like, okay, let's do this. And yeah, it was quite a lot. Getting flowers and the venue, and we did have a reception after too. It was just with the 25 people, but somehow just pulled off a really special day.
wow. How
Yeah.
long have you two been together now?
So we've been living together for 4 years, and we have been, or this fall will be 4 years, so I guess 3.5. And then we have been close friends and acquaintances and in each other's lives for about 8 years. So it's
Mhm.
been a long time,
Wow.
that
Because
we've
I
known
feel
each
like we
other.
left off, I feel like last episode we kind of left off with the story of you two meeting. So
Yes,
it's cute
there's,
to
yeah.
begin with you two being married.
Mm-hmm. Yep, now we're married and it feels great. And we went away just for 2 days to have a little bit of getaway time, but we're planning a special 11-day trip to Jamaica in December for like a honeymoon of sorts. And so we have a beautiful place booked already, and we're kind of, preparing for that special trip. So,
Oh, why did you choose Jamaica?
well, his family is from Jamaica. So
Okay.
his great aunt still lives there. And this was another like,
Right. You told me this because you were gonna make Jamaican food that one time. I remember we were messaging
yes.
about. Yeah,
So I've
okay.
made a lot of Jamaican food since then, and I love Jamaican food and Jamaican culture. It's so delicious. And so his great aunt, who he never met his grandparents. They passed away. He never really got to meet them. And yet his great aunt, who is 93 or 94, she lives in Jamaica. There's like fruit trees in her yard and goats and animals. And like it's a beautiful place. And she comes to the US once a year. And it just so happened that she was in the US during the time of our wedding. So she got to come. And we couldn't have planned that either. Like with just how last minute it was, and she was so excited to be there. She didn't, she got into town and we went over to see her, and I said, Auntie, did Brian tell you about the wedding? And she's like, she almost starts crying. She grabbed my hand. She goes, I've been praying for you guys, and I was gonna talk to him about this. When is it happening? And I was like, wait, let me get him. I thought you knew already. So he comes over. Unbeknownst to me, 10 minutes prior, she had said to Brian separately, we need to talk. And he was like, what do you want to talk to me about? She's like, later, not right now. And so he was like, is this what you wanted to talk to me about? She's like, yes. And so she was so excited. And then we told her, like, it's happening while you're in town. She was like, I'm going to be walking in the clouds.
Oh my gosh, what guy? That must
So
have been the
cute.
best news for her
She was
imaginable.
so happy.
She came being like, I have to tell his boy to marry this woman, and then it's like,
And then
yeah, he's like, actually, we're doing it this
we're doing
weekend,
it
and
in
you
a
can.
couple weeks, right? And you can come. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay,
yes.
so last episode, you felt like, well, I mean, there were some loose ends for people. I definitely want to go more into your healing and like how you healed, because I think that was
Hmm.
just such an amazing thing that we didn't get to go deeper into. But you had also mentioned there were some other pieces for you, some stuff with like more mind control things, maybe.
Hmm.
What do you want to go into first?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yes, I was thinking about how I actually jotted down just a couple bullet points for myself because I'm like, I knew there was a few things that I wanted to kind of chat about. And so one of them that I thought we could maybe chat about a little bit is kind of the myth around like only someone who's like stupid or not smart would end up in a cult. And
Yeah.
that kind of came up for me where I'm like, and actually, I don't know if you've seen, and maybe any listeners have seen it. Have you seen the Netflix show You? It's kind of popular
No.
for a while. Okay. So it's like about this guy who he's a serial killer of all things, but he ends up, manipulating women into falling in love with him. And it was so interesting because I watched the season finale a couple weeks ago, and I even found myself sitting there being like, how did these women fall for this? And then I was like, you know how they fell for this. And like, it was just so interesting how even myself, being someone who's been through a very horrible manipulative situation and a cult, can even sometimes forget the how does this happen. And so I thought it would be nice to have a little bit of a conversation for anyone who either listened to the first podcast or anyone who finds this and is curious either how to answering the question how does this happen, or also someone who's been through it and is trying to figure out how did it happen to me. So that was kind of one of the things I thought we could chat about a little bit. um so for me, I feel like there's these textbook like methodical markers almost with pretty much any cult that I've now learned about. And for me, what I experienced was very much a love bombing of sorts. And that's oftentimes used in relation to like relationships, but it is used in cults where people are, and for me, it was like I was just like showered with attention and love and support and validation, all these human needs that we all have. And I was targeted in a sense because I was missing some of those things at that time. I wasn't getting that support from my own parents. I wasn't getting those needs met. And so it was like this process of, like I said, love bombing, like all of that attention, all of that love validation, which then builds like this trust with this person. And so then it transitions from the trust and the love and all of that it transitions into the control piece, which can come from so many things, but like um in my case, because it was a cult with scripture, there was all of these scripture used to validate what they were saying. And this could be anything. So for instance, it could be science, it could be woke ideology, it could be like it doesn't have to be scripture only. In my case, it
Mhm.
was Bible. And so then it's like there's this dark twisting of there's always some truth. I wanted to highlight that. There's always some truth. So whether the percentage is 20%, 10%, 2%, 50%, like, and it ranges. Like in the beginning, maybe it was 90% truth, but then as the trust is built, the love bombing, all that happens, then it's like there's like this pendulum swing that happens where it gradually starts shifting. And the other big components, I feel like there is always a mental component, in my opinion, some form of sexual component, whether it's an actual abuse to the person or a control of someone's sexual behavior through
Mhm.
rules, through religion, through whatever. Um, and then the financial piece. So like for me in this religion, I don't think we touched on this at all, but you were required to tithe, which is a biblical principle that, but it's like forced on you. It's not really a choice. And and then it carried even further in my case where it then became, once I had moved in with them, my responsibility to fund their life so they could get messages from God, so they could not have to work anymore. So basically, I was then exploited also financially. And so these are like themes that I've seen where your walls are broken down, and then the truth that they maybe said in the beginning starts twisting and starts shifting in a drastic way. And then another piece of it that I've noticed is cult leaders tend to be, and I don't want to say that a blanket statement, but have very narcissistic tendencies, like to
Yeah.
very extreme levels. And are they're very smart. Like they're very smart and they have a charisma and a persona about them that draws people to them. And I've
Hmm.
noticed that in the first cult, homeschooling cult, and then also the second one with the pastors. And one of the big pieces that they do to control you is make you feel special and important. So like, oh, you're getting access to something special that no one else gets access to. Like and then they would mask really fucked up things that they would do as, oh, you're just allowed to see pastor in his human. Like you're like you get, like it's so laughable now, right? But it was almost like,
Well, I'm laughing because I remember you writing this to me when I left the cult that I was in because
mm-hmm,
I was expressing the same thing. And I just think it's so funny that in two completely different cults, like very different experiences, but like the abusive behavior is characterized the same way. Like, oh, you're just seeing her human. You're just seeing and the fact that that same sentence was used for you in this situation, I just think is so funny in a dark way where it's just like, yeah, it becomes such a perfect excuse. And for me, I think especially when you're someone who's just more trusting in nature and like you have
mm-hmm,
a good heart and you want to believe that the people around you do as well, you are open-minded and you're open to like yourself being wrong. And so you see
yep,
this bad behavior and you're like, this is off, something's wrong. But then if
mm-hmm,
the people around the person and the person themselves is just like if you can't accept they're human, then something's wrong with you.
right,
And so then,
mm-hmm,
especially when other people are amplifying that, like everyone around you is like going along with it, then you're
mm-hmm,
the one who's weird and wrong and doing it wrong if you can't get there, right? So it's like
right,
if you
mm-hmm,
can't just see the bad behavior and accept that people are human and they have flaws, and then it gets so tricky because you're in your own head, you're like, well, I want to like I know people have flaws and like I don't want to put people on a pedestal, and I do understand that like people have flaws and I have flaws, and you kind of like
rationalize,
yeah,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah. So it's funny that they have the
like
same.
such different worlds, but same process
I
of,
think narcissists across the board tend to use these same mechanisms because I don't know if it's just part of their innate that kind of personality type or
mm-hmm,
character type, this disturbed uh character type, or if they just pick it up from elsewhere. Like I'm not really sure. And I know that they do like cult tactics have evolved a lot over time, and
mm-hmm,
they've become a lot more sneaky because as the internet has exploded, um you can like study other cults, and then you see when cult members speak out, like new cult leaders look at that and they think of new ways. Like narcissists are
Yep.
so good at finding new ways to twist things.
100%.
So you might be
Mm-hmm.
like, these are the hallmarks of a cult, and then the narcissist is like, well, I'm gonna twist
This
that
is
in this
why
new
it's
way.
not, or this is, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. No, 100%. And especially whenever, everything had happened with, the police and us being interviewed, there was multiple times where he would even say like, oh, like, I know what's going to happen. Someone's going to try to say this is a cult. I remember him even saying that, like
Yeah.
verbatim, and then explaining why it wasn't and all the reasons why, like, and it just, they're, again, they're the charisma, the intelligence, the, like, they're not dumb. You know what I mean? Like, they're
Yeah.
very smart in what they're doing. And to your point, someone who is trusting and like I love how you phrase that of like open-minded and like willing to, see different perspectives and like all those things resonate. And then you add on top of that my limited life experience on top of
Yeah.
all of those things. And just I was definitely a very vulnerable target, and they saw that and exploited the shit out of it for years.
Mhm.
It's so interesting. And but like I remember it was many years ago, so I can't speak to it specifically, but I watched the Leah Remini doc, I think that's how you say her name, from Scientology.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it was so fascinating because um they spoke about, and obviously Scientology is huge and they have, you know, very disturbing methods of like lack of sleep and work and things like that. And that's what I also experienced, which was
Mhm.
extreme lack of sleep and working. At one point I was working full time during the day and I was working overnight loading tractor trailers at FedEx,
Yeah.
and I was sleeping like 2 hours a night. And so I remember that, and just being that I just literally had no physical or mental energy. Like I was so depleted that it was like impossible to figure anything out. And that's another tactic. And I feel like that's used in various ways. Another documentary I watched, I don't know if you watched this one, about Teal Swan
I watched that when I was in
when
the
you were in
cult.
it. Okay.
So it would be interesting to
Interesting.
watch it again now because we all, so the cult leader of my
Mm-hmm.
cult, like wanted us all to watch it. Like she watched it and she had all these opinions about like, I don't even remember what her opinions were. If they were probably that the members were so stupid and responsible for their own decisions. I believe that she largely took the side of Teal Swan, but I don't really
I,
remember.
I,
I don't
I
even remember
vague
what my opinion
what
was.
your opinion was at the time. Okay. I vaguely remember seeing that the person you were connected with, I vaguely remember seeing something on social media, and they were very much in support of Teal Swan from my
I
memory.
watched it and I remember that I posted in my stories like my opinion of what it,
Okay.
but I don't even
Remember,
I
yeah.
think that I want to say that I had a sort of, I was like, oh, I can kind of see both
Mm-hmm.
sides. Like I feel like she's not holding things well and I feel like the members are
Mm-hmm.
responsible.
You could
What
see
did
both.
what did
Yeah.
you think?
So it's been a while since I watched it, but what I do remember is more specifically with the one person who was like her partner, but not her partner, and then he was trying to be in a relationship with someone else, and it was honestly, it was what I remember, and what stood out to me was those similar tactics of like sleep deprivation, working so much for very little to no pay, but again being under the guise of like you chose to volunteer. But then it was very like seemed very sneaky how it unfolded to that, and I remember looking like that man, I don't even remember his name, but whoever was partnered with them or with her, like it just looked like he did his whole life, just like life force was just being like he was just fading away, and just looked, it just reminded me of like how those tactics, and when you think you're doing something good but you're actually just selling your whole soul, like that's kind of what
Right.
stood out to me. But it just again had similar themes of these, that what we're talking about.
I remember her Teal Swan coming out after that and saying that like they majorly edited the documentary in such a
Yes.
way to make her look whatever. And I'm sure that that is true. Like I know that they do that with editing. And I think she's a bad person. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just think now I'm just like when there's that much smoke around a person, I now know to just be like extremely highly skeptical. I'm like there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just um And actually, when I was speaking out against the cult that I left, and
Mm-hmm.
the woman was threatening to have had her lawyer send a cease and desist and stuff, the
Yep.
lawyer was the same lawyer as what for Teal Swan. Like he sent me a
Wow.
whole one of his threatening letters. He kept sending so many threatening letters to me. And Jordan, there was like, you're gonna lose your house and you're gonna all this stuff. And
Wow.
part of the letter was like, we did this case, like I held this case for Teal Swan against whatever newspaper in the UK, and like they had to retract their story and lost millions of dollars. I don't remember what the
Mm-hmm.
exact thing was,
Yeah.
but he used his case with Teal Swan as an
Wow.
example. And I remember it's such a uh, funny way when you learn. This was my first ever real experience with like lawyers in
Yeah.
this way where it was so like I was maybe being sued and uh and it's funny when you get these letters because like you think they're lawyers and so they have to tell the truth.
Mm.
Not true at all.
Not the
They
case.
can
Right.
and
Right.
what's wild is they can basically say any shit they want. They can just
To like
make
bait
stuff
you.
up
Yep.
in their
Yep.
cease and
Mm-hmm.
desist, like in the letters they send you. They can just blatantly lie. So like when I first would get these letters, I would read them and be like, oh, like what is this? Oh my God. Like he like did this for Teal Swan and he won. And then but then by the time I got that letter, I had gotten enough of them where I was like, wait a minute, let me look a little further into this. I don't. And then as soon as I like Googled the
Crazy.
case, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
he's totally misrepresenting what happened in this case. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even the way he was portraying it. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
So
it,
crazy.
but it is that kind of thing. And I think it's really hard. So something I wanted to go back to about what you said is like, I have been really bothered by this narrative of people who join cults where it's like they're stupid, they just like, or that they're looking for something that they lost. Because sometimes, like you said, like, yeah, some of those things were missing in your life and you found them here. But for me, it wasn't like I had this big hole. Like when I joined the cult, I wasn't like, poor me, my life is in shambles. I'm just like lost and looking for love. I had great friends. I had family support. Like it was COVID, so that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like,
Mm-hmm. That was the thing. Yeah.
and maybe if it wasn't COVID, maybe that wouldn't have happened, I don't know. But like
Mm-hmm.
I was fulfilled. I had Jordan. I was happy. The only thing I was looking for was like guidance around my business.
Mm-hmm.
That was why I fell in there. But what happened was that same kind of love bombing thing that you had
Mm-hmm.
said was like right off the bat there was just this like this person she was like, you see the truth, like you have
Mm-hmm.
this gift, you have the same gift that I have. And I thought she was important, like I thought she did have this,
Mm-hmm.
so her
Mm-hmm.
saying to me like you have this too and I see this in you, it just felt like, oh, someone's like seeing kind of spiritually.
Right.
Like she was like, I'm devoted to truth, you're devoted to truth too. And she was like, I'm devoted to the feminine. And she wrote something to me in our very first interaction where I messaged her and I said I was thinking about joining our program. And it was like, um, she was like, I know devotion when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, she sees that in me. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
there. And but then it was a different experience for me, I think also narcissists use different tactics with different people. Like they kind of become a different person with whoever they're interacting with, because really what they're doing is they're mirroring you back to you, like the
Mm-hmm.
things you are and the things you want to be more of, they like mirror that back to yourself. So in that grooming phase for you, it was so long. I remember you had said like a year
Mm-hmm.
and a half.
Yep.
They
Mm-hmm.
get you so deep. For me it wasn't too long, but it was a sort of like, uh she never, I think she knew better for some people she would like scream at them, you know, or be really abusive. I think she knew better than to do that to me
Mhm.
to an extent. She
Mhm.
tried a couple times to like push
Mhm.
the boundaries, but then when I didn't, you know, she could tell where the line was. And but what she would do is sort of pull back. So it
Mhm.
was like a sort of hot and cold. Like it was like
Yes.
sometimes she's there and all loving and releasing, and then sometimes the love is just sort of gone.
Mhm.
And now I know, but I didn't really understand at the time that there was this. I think I was more susceptible because of this role I had played in my childhood of like trying to please mom. You know, like there was this way of like, how do I how do I make myself pleasing to mom so that the love doesn't go away?
Mhm.
And I knew how to, like, it felt familiar. It was like,
Right.
I know how to do this. I know how to please this
Mhm.
woman. I know how to, like, make her happy. And then you combine that with all the spiritual stuff. Like, I was just so uh,
Wow.
in
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
there's this feeling of,
Mhm.
I think I think something, a quality perhaps that we both have is like the good student sort of quality of like, I
Mm.
want to, like, you excel
Yeah.
at so many things that you did, right? And you're like the
Mhm.
oldest.
Yep.
I was
Yes.
the
Oldest
oldest in
girl.
my
Yep.
house.
Yep. Mhm.
Like, there's this feeling of like, I'm going to do well here.
Mhm. Yeah, like everywhere I go, I do well. So I'm gonna do this well. Mhm.
Hmm.
For sure. I think it's fascinating that everything you're saying is so resonant and true from my experience of how it's like they are like how you said they would she would maybe yell at someone else or be more intense with someone else, but that wouldn't work with you. And
Hmm.
so I again I saw that so much like the way they treated me was different than how they would treat my best friend and her then husband and this other gentleman that went there and his anyone else. It was very tailored because it was like being and now I looking back I see it was basically like they were looking for a reaction, and if they weren't getting the reaction they wanted or they weren't getting the result they wanted they would shift, they would change their strategy, like literally strategy.
Yeah. Because you have to think about like, what are they looking for? Narcissists are, they're looking for fuel. And that can come in any form. It can come in your praise is good fuel.
Mhm.
But I read a book by a narcissist and he said that like even better fuel than your praise is your like being upset with them. Like your emotion of
Mm.
any sort.
Mhm.
It feeds that in them.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
if they can get like any reaction they can get from you
Mhm.
is fuel for them. And so if it's a bad reaction, like even better. That fuels
Yeah.
them even
That is
more.
so interesting
But
that
they need this
mhm.
constant supply of praise,
Mhm.
um, because it's masking. Like
Mhm.
he calls it, I think, the monster in him, like the dark thing in him he doesn't
Mm.
want to ever talk about. There's like this gaping hole of
Wow. Yeah.
insecurity, you know, whatever was missing.
Right.
But they need all this fuel as a sort of distraction from that thing, because if they don't have the fuel, they're left alone with this like kind of drowning,
Mhm.
intense.
Mhm.
And so uh, they're constantly just like that's why they're constantly just like this woman will she still will like message people to just get a reaction, like message people she doesn't know
Doesn't even.
who commented on a post from like months ago about her to be like, I
Yep.
saw your thing and you don't want to go to war with me. And it's just like
It's
she's
yep.
just looking for someone to feed in and like give her
Mhm.
any sort of emotion.
Mhm.
um but even if you're not someone who will give them negative, like if you're someone who will just sit there and praise them, and that was kind of my role with her.
Mhm.
It was just
Mhm.
like, I'll defend you. I will give you a lot of love and praise, and I'll like be what you want.
Mhm.
And if
Yeah.
I misstep and she pulls her love back, then I know like I have to adjust.
Adjust. Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what his wife is. That because she would constantly be praising him and oh, isn't he so great at this and da da like she was just constantly feeding that and it's yeah, so interesting. And it's like sometimes I think of her like, he's in prison right now as he should be. And um I used to have dreams about her. It's been probably a few years since I have. And I used to have this reoccurring dream that like ran into her in public and like talked to her and finally like was like, you can leave, like you don't have to stay. And it was a reoccurring dream for a while. And like it's so interesting because I mean, I live in the same state, which is, I mean, a whole thing because I had moved away for a while, but I moved back. And and yet I never see her. I've never run into her. I no longer like avoid certain places. I just live my life. And I've always wondered like if I will ever run into her. Um like I could definitely like seek it out if I wanted to, but I've never felt pulled to do that. But I've just like always wondered, like, especially now that he's been in jail, because they were so codependent in such close proximity all the time. Similar to me, she was also pretty sleep deprived and with no time to herself, you know, and he got to her in high school. And I
Yeah.
remember her showing me pictures where she used to dress like, she would say, "Oh, he saved me. I used to dress like a slut before I met him." And, he saved me from all the college boys. And he like forced her to wear like men's clothes to college. And she has pictures I remember seeing of her in like oversized jean overalls and like all this stuff. So he got to her in high school. Like and you know what's so fascinating is the way they went on their first date. She was the water girl, he was a football player, and his friends made a bet with him. I bet you, I don't know how, I think it was $5 or something. I bet you $5 you can't get her to go on a date with you. And that's how they went on a first date was because
Wow.
he would, and that was like, I would be like embarrassed to tell that story. They like told that story of like, oh, God was just, they were meant to be together and, he would have been too stubborn otherwise. And God was putting them together. Like, so he got to her so young that it's like, it's just very interesting because she has a very dark energy herself as well in a sense, but then there's also a part of her like when there were few times, and I say few because they were very few and far between, where her and I had solo time where we like I remember one day we went to like BJ's and grocery shop together and we got dressed all cute and we did our makeup and we went shopping and we came home and we had such a nice time together and he was like, what were you guys doing? Having fun without me? Why are you all dressed up nice? Who are you dressing up nice for? And like we were just reamed out for like hours.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, does she ever like notice these things and how like messed up that is? And I've wondered if any distance from him would change that for her. But I honestly, I don't know that it will because I feel like he has such a hold on her. Like, I don't know, it's very interesting.
Do you think they're still in communication while he's in prison?
I'm sure because you're able to have, even if it's only like visits, whether it's once a week or once a month or however often it is, you can write, you can, depending on what privileges you get, sometimes you can even get certain type of devices to communicate. I'm pretty sure you have to pay for them, but like unlimited phone calls. So he could be calling her every day. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? For like an hour, making her report her whole, every move. Like it's just so interesting. But anyways, yeah, that's
I've been
something.
wondering this question. I'm curious to see, to hear what you think of like, so like someone like her, I wonder about the level of responsibility she has for her own actions that she took toward you. And I've been thinking about this in the context of like I've been reading a lot about Charles Manson and the Manson family. Do you remember the
Can you remind me who
murders?
that is? Charles.
He murdered, it was the family, they murdered people back in the 60s. Like
Is
they
there like a
killed all
trial
those
coming up
people.
about it soon? Or is that something different?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I've
Charles
been reading
Manson
the book
murders. Okay.
Chaos, which is
Okay.
like a big book. It's about the CIA. The CIA was involved in the Manson murders. They
Got it.
like, and
Mm-hmm.
so, but I've been thinking a lot about, so like, and this is a maybe a little different because they used drugs like LSD and speed to get these people like to control. these women and to like
Mm-hmm.
change their behavior and make them more violent and whatever. And it was kind of like the CIA experimenting to be like, how can we use drugs to change the behavior of people
Mm-hmm.
so that we can cause things to happen in society that we want to happen without like doing it directly,
Right, right.
all these
Mm-hmm.
sneaky things. And so,
Yes.
but I've been thinking about like, do you have to have some innate character issue already to be able to like be in a cult and then commit murder?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and I just wonder for myself because like for me and this I was different because it was online. I wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
in person with this cult all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel that for me there was a line where it was sort of like no matter how much I'm in here and I love this woman, when I saw her abusive behavior to her husband, the behavior I considered abusive,
Mm-hmm.
allegedly, I will say, to her husband, I was like, absolutely not. This is
Mm-hmm.
it
Like
for
a
me. I'm
hard
done.
line. Yeah.
However,
Mm-hmm.
there were other people in there who I know have been around witnessing that same thing, who have kept quiet, who have just gone along with it, who have
Mm-hmm.
participated. Um, and I just wonder, like, I know that when I was in there, some of the ways that I acted were wrong, but to me were wrong to
Mm-hmm.
people. Just in my like I think I became a lot more superior and narcissistic
Mm-hmm.
myself like in my
Sure.
communication with people I was more harsh. These things that I look back on now and I'm like, "Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Like how was I that way? That's not me at all, but somehow
Mm-hmm.
in there I became that." But to what extent I wonder like I just wonder how much it depends on the person, how deep you have to be in. And then I think it's different if you're a child, obviously, right? Because then if
Mm-hmm.
you're in there since you're a child, your whole world is formed
Right. Yep.
around this.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's like
but do
all
you
you
think
know.
there's
Mm-hmm.
like an inherent how much do you think you're responsible?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's a great conversation to have because I think it's so nuanced and so tricky because I've thought a lot about this. Like I've thought a lot about like even specifically her, and we can use her as an example, like she was complicit and would stand by and participate in some really horrible things, specifically to me and with the baby. And so it's like very tricky because then at the same time, I remember her attempting, and she always had a little more leeway to push back with him because, like, she was his wife. She had like a little more say. And I by no means would say that she like saved the baby's life because I think that's a little bit maybe dramatic, but she did step in a couple times and was like, okay, I think that's too much, or I think that's enough. And it's like horrible to even think of this, of, what was happening. But it's like she was attempting to stop things. And especially because I lived in that for those 5 years. And when I think about her living with him for, oh gosh, I feel like they had been together for 15 years by the time I met them. Maybe I have to do the math. They got together in high school, and when I met them, I was 21, they were 31. So, however old high school to 31, that's a long time. They had
Yeah.
already been together. And so, when I think
And like
about,
formative years too.
right, like teenager, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
very young that
Like her
he,
brain's still forming. Yeah.
right. And so, like, everything that she went through of even her own, like she was in a military family, they moved a lot as a kid, her dad wasn't super present, like she didn't have the best childhood support either, so I think that left her again maybe a little bit more vulnerable than someone who had a super solid family. And I've always wondered like what her family would say or think of him or the situation. I've always wondered because I actually did meet them. They lived in Myrtle Beach, and we went down and visited, and I met her parents and her siblings. And I've always wondered like what, because they I was introduced to them as like, this is your new granddaughter. Like I forget what I called them, but I called them something. Like she knitted me stuff and mailed it to me. Like
Well,
Yeah,
did
anyways,
they
so
seem normal?
they were heavily involved in the Jehovah's Witness
Uh,
church, I believe, but not since the wife was young. This was like since she had moved away. They were heavily involved in, I believe it was Jehovah's Witness. So they were quite like religious in their own way. And they did not seem totally normal. No, they definitely seemed a little off. So, yeah. But circling back to your question and the conversation, I feel like it's such a fine line, meaning I do feel that she has a lot of responsibility in the sense that, yes, she has been in it for a long time, but she still had a gauge of like what was right and wrong.
yeah,
And that's where I'm like, okay. And for me, I think, because similarly to you, and that's why I'm like, the way I treated my best friend was horrible for a few of those years because they turned me against her and they were like, she's, basically exiled, she's, what crazy and all these things. And so, and yet it was like as soon as I like realized how messed up it was, I didn't just say, "Oh, well, I have to stay here." I like got out and I did everything I could to like rectify things. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Whereas
yeah,
like with her, I feel like there's no way that she doesn't know how wrong it is.
right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, that's what I wonder. And I wonder, like, for you, you were so deep in there that you are not sleeping, you're, giving all your money to them, you're all doing all these things. But, like, how far do you think you would have gone for them? Like if he told
yeah,
you to like steal from your
right.
work,
Yep.
what, like do you think you would have
What would
crossed
have crossed? Yeah.
certain lines or like where do you think you would have stopped?
Yeah. Great question. And while I'm thinking of it, because I thought of this earlier, I'll say this real quick. When I was speaking with the detective and explaining my whole story when I came forward after I left, she was like, this is the type of person that, as like the police, that we are like concerned, like he could get someone to kill for him, no problem, because of
Yeah,
how calculated he is. And so I just wanted to say, like, that's a very real question. And I think, I don't know. I mean, thankfully, I was never asked to do anything to that level of like stealing from my job. You know what I mean? The closest thing it came to of like elite, I don't know if this is even illegal, but like he forced me to write a check to him from my bank, and my bank covered an $800 overdraft fee. So you know how if you like
right, you
accidentally
told me
bill,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
that was the closest thing, and I did that. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like so illegal, but like, you know what I mean? So there was definitely like things that, you know, I don't know. I really don't. I would like to say I don't think I would have, especially knowing myself, I really don't think I would have been able to like kill someone or do something that extreme. I really don't think so. But at the same time, if I think about the fact that part of what helped me leave was the fact that I had an outside job and I had that time away from them. And I was able to, even though it wasn't long, and they would literally come to my job to eat lunch with me, or they would follow me around to work. Like, it's just crazy. Even though it was still limited, it slowly helped open my eyes to like how crazy it was. Now, let's say they had millions of dollars and I didn't have to have that job, and all I
Yeah.
ever did was at their house with them. I don't know. It could be a different answer. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could have gotten to a very extreme point where maybe I would have. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, that I
yeah.
guess that's what I wonder and that's what scares me is like there's this like I guess I can easily imagine how you could get to that point
Mm-hmm.
just based on my own experience of how my own behavior changed
Yep.
without me knowing.
Right. Without you realizing it was happening. It was like this
Yeah, I didn't realize
gradual,
it was happening, and
yep.
I actively thought it wasn't happening. Like when people were like, I remember I wrote to a friend, I was so like, uh, just kind of mean, like back
Mm-hmm.
to her, and she wrote back like where did caring Demetra go? Like she kind of said something
Mm.
like I don't know where my,
Mhm.
and I was so irritated. I was like, I'm not your caring Demetra. Like, ew, go away. But now I look
Mhm.
back and I'm like, I was like really,
Mhm.
really mean. Like, I just had a different tone than I ever would have taken on
Ever
my
would have
own.
naturally, yeah.
And so there's like this,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like I like you, I would like to think I wouldn't go that
Mhm.
far, but I also have had the experience to know that like if I was living somewhere, I'm sleeping only 2 hours a night. If if you slowly get into this place where
Mhm.
you're in a group who's also doing the same thing, because the group
Mhm.
mind is
Yes.
so
Mhm.
strong. We're so
Right.
wired to like be in that be in
Mhm.
community and go along with like I just don't know. I can kind of imagine how like I don't know, it could escalate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at the same time, uh I don't know. I have
It's
such a
very
strong
no, it's
sense of right and wrong that like I'm
right,
like
right.
I don't think. But you
Mhm.
just yeah, I think it's hard. I just have been wondering about it a lot because I think it's
Mhm.
I remember having people say to me when I left, uh I remember someone on Instagram in particular was really uh like couldn't forgive me. I can't remember what she was
Mm.
saying exactly, but she was commenting kind of being like if you could act that way at all,
Mm.
then like you just have a bad heart. Like you just like
Wow.
don't. Like she was
Interesting.
just like
Uh-huh.
if you could ever be in that, if you could have ever not known that it was wrong, if you could have ever acted poorly, then like you just have a bad heart and like don't. And I was like, well, I know that like that's not true, And it's like, and I could feel this sort of like I would have felt that way. Like I would have said those things she said had
Mhm.
it not happened to me
Right. Right.
because I wouldn't have thought that like you could do things like that your
Mhm.
behavior could change,
To that
that
degree.
you could kind of
Yep.
change depending on just somebody.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I did, and so then I was faced with this like, it was just it's still this kind of it's like I see now how it happened, but there's just this like how
Mhm.
could this happen without me knowing at all that it was happening
Mhm.
and actively thinking and like you said, they're very, very good at telling you ahead of time like the way people are gonna like when he said to you like oh they're gonna say we're a cult and we're not a cult like the narcissists prepare ahead of time for
Yep.
what people might say to you so
Right.
then when someone says something to you you already
You already are like, oh, I was ready for this. I knew
yeah
this was
and
gonna
it
happen.
affirms the
It
wisdom of the
affirms what
narcissist.
exactly.
You're just like ah
I
I'm in the right
like
place
they
because
were
like
right. I
they
can't wait to tell
predicted those
them this is what happened. Something,
yeah
yeah, something that was so interesting speaking about the control and like how you said, how could this happen? It's like when I think about, and this goes back to the cult thing too. If someone can control, like it's like there's these levels to it where like they'll control like it's like little tests of seeing what they can control about you.
yeah
And and so for me it was like so gradual, like I told you, slow and steady. But one example that was so interesting that was very much like not me was whenever I was working one of the jobs in one of the grocery stores, it was a very how would I describe this? I don't even know if people listening to this would know what the store is. It was a small grocery store that is typically in very rough neighborhoods. And so I ended up getting a job there as an assistant store manager, acting store manager of a whole store. And it was in a fairly rough area. And I think he was very concerned about like the male attention I would be getting and how I was going to present myself and all these things. And so he told me that when they asked me what name I wanted to go by, that I was to go by, we'll just say, we'll pick a random name. Um, we'll just say Jones. That's the most random, boring name. He was like, "You're gonna go by your last name, Miss Jones." And so when I was going through my orientation and I said to them, "Oh, I prefer to go by Miss Jones," and they kind of looked at me like, basically like, okay, they kind of pushed back. And he had warned me, oh, they're probably going to push back on this, but like, people can be called whatever they want nowadays, and you have every right. It's your name. You literally just want to be called. But it was all about the control piece, and it was forcing me to like do this thing that was super weird. It made me stand out even more in a weird way. Like, it was so ridiculous. And so my name tag is one of the few things actually saved just as part of funny things of the craziness. I have like a small box with it. I got rid of most things, but I have like the name tags from the different jobs, and it's just laughable. But anyways, it was just reminding me of what you were saying, where like this was something I never would have even cared or would have even been on my radar. Like I would have just gone by my first name. That's normally what I go by, and yet I had to like embrace this whole like facade of like, oh no, like I prefer to go by my last name. Like, and I forced everyone to call me this, whether no matter. Anyways, so these are just examples of like, okay, if we can get her to do this, if we can get like, it was all these little micro things that just started obviously adding up like crazy. And to your point, like, where would it end? It's a very valid question. And it's kind of scary, honestly, because it's like, I couldn't tell you. You know what I mean? Obviously, thank goodness I woke up to realize, wait a second, this is insane, and got out. But like, not everyone does. And
Yeah.
that's what's, yeah.
Well, I know so many people that have left where I was, and
Do you?
they don't, I mean, I don't talk to them still,
Sure, but you
but
know of
but
people that,
I think a lot of them have not done the deconstruction of that.
mm-hmm,
Like they don't think it was a cult, or they
mm-hmm,
just don't want
yeah,
to look at it. I don't know what it is.
yeah.
I do think as a whole, it seems to be a rarer quality for somebody to be willing to have their life shattered. Like, in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
like being able to recognize
Yeah.
that you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan and I talk about this a lot because I just think I'm surprised. I guess it's not surprising, but I am continuously surprised by how reluctant people are. Like, if something is going to threaten your world, like your
Mm-hmm.
worldview or your story about something and how life is, people are so
Yeah.
resistant to that.
Resistant to
They'll
it.
do
Yep.
kind of anything
To
in
not,
order to have
yeah.
that not happen.
Yep.
And I think that yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's always been a trait of mine, or if it's
Right.
because my brother's accident happened at such a young
Mm-hmm.
age where like my life did shatter, and
It,
I was
yeah.
like, okay, well, life can go on. Like,
Yep.
eh, but I have had this experience many times of like everything I believed to be true just crumbling, being like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's start again.
Yep.
And I think that like for whatever reason, people are just, I mean, it is scary, but people are just so terrified of it that they'll choose to live a life that is
Mm-hmm.
false, that they
A
might
hundred
even know
percent.
is false,
Yeah. But they
in order to
stay.
not have to like open that box.
I think that's a very interesting question because I feel the same way as you, where like I feel like I've lived multiple lifetimes in the sense of
Yeah.
like, I left my family, went to this situation, I rebuilt my piano studio. I moved halfway across the country. Like I have no problem just shit like, we just sold our house. I'm back where I never thought I would be, but I'm like, great, here's a new chapter. Like I have that way about me, so I relate to that to you in that where I don't know if it's necessarily a personality thing or a trait like you said from childhood things or what it is, but I do notice how much people and I even notice it with certain family members and just people and humans in general that some people are so afraid. I feel, I guess I'm making that assumption that it's fear, but maybe it's something else, but that they're not willing for whatever reason to either change their mind, admit that they were maybe wrong, or maybe it wasn't what they thought or whatever. And I think that's something I jotted down. I think I had jotted down on my one of my bullet points was about, yeah, finding out like and knowing you have the right to change your mind. It's totally okay to like embrace and acknowledge and like make a shift. That was something I jotted down actually, so it resonates with what you were saying. Um, and I don't know what it is that prevents people from doing that because if anything, I feel like when you're in a cult, it potentially is even harder to do that. But
Mhm.
somehow once I like had that realization, I was like, I'm out of here. Took a
Yeah.
long time, which is really scary, but yeah.
Well, and I think what's most interesting in a sense about your story is like you grew up in a cult,
Mm-hmm.
which and then went right into this other one. And so and to still have this underlying sense suggests that that's like innate.
Mm-hmm.
Like do you know what I mean? I don't know what to call it. Like your spirit or your just like humanness or your something like
Intuition, I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
something.
there throughout and
Mm-hmm.
I think you see it sometimes in certain children growing up in cults where like they realize something's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I remember asking my mom so many questions as like a 12-year-old of like maybe even younger, honestly, like really questioning, trying to figure out like why is this? Why is that? Like just a lot of questions.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think too I wonder um but I think it's interesting how because like kids can grow up in the same family and some stay in the cult. Like did you read Educated?
I did actually.
Yeah, that'd be a good
Yes.
book for you. Uh,
Yeah.
but like in her family, she and I think her brother maybe like got out and kind of left and went to
Mm-hmm.
school and did their, but like the one sister and I think the
Mm-hmm.
other brother, whoever, like stayed deep
Stayed.
in.
Yeah.
Like was just like, I'm staying with my parents. I fully believe what they say.
Yep.
And so siblings growing up in the same family,
Doesn't mean,
like
yeah.
and it's just yeah, again, I don't know if it's a combination of just natural like personality
Right.
plus
Gravitation.
just certain experiences one has and the
Mm-hmm.
other doesn't that like might open their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to I think there for me I think there's been a underlying commitment to the truth. Um
Mm-hmm.
I keep quoting this. I can't remember now where I read it. There's someone saying like you have to love the truth.
Mm.
Like if you're gonna do I don't know, some sort of work, some sort of something. It
Mm-hmm.
was like you have to love the truth. And I was like, that resonated with me because it was like,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't care about that more than anything else, almost, and I think you could also equate truth to God in the sense, like, even if you don't know it's God, I think
Yeah.
that is God. Like, there's this, uh, and I don't know why, but I think that's been an underlying thing for me throughout different experiences of being like having my life crumble. It's like, well, if it's
Yeah.
not true, then I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why this cult in particular was so sneaky because it pretended to
It
be the truth.
pretended to
Like,
be true.
she was
Yeah.
like, I feel the truth. I'm all about the truth. And I was like, cool, me too. And I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
that like you can pretend
You can
that.
market it as truth and it's, yeah. Hmm. Something that's so interesting is how loyal, when you're in this cult mind, you become to the leader no matter what they do. And an
Mhm.
interesting example that I remember, and these were little things that like were red flags to me that I remember, and it was towards the end of my time there, but the pastors were underneath a larger organization of pastors that are like mega churches, like Kenneth Copeland, Jesse Duplantis. They're like TV pastors that have billions and private jets and all this stuff. And we would go to these conferences every year, and they had really weaseled their way into like the top level of these people. And I remember the Kenneth Copeland, who's like kind of the head guy, he preaches all the time that the days of man are to be 120. This is like a Bible verse, and he preaches this that he's going to live to be 120. And so I don't know how old he is now. As far as I know, he's still alive, but he has a very, in my opinion, quite demonic energy about him. But anyhow, this person, I remember the pastor that abused me at the time. I remember him saying that if he found out that Kenneth Copeland had on hearing aids, and if he was literally like a robot that was just being walked up and down the stage, he would still follow him because who cares? People need to believe God and all this stuff. And I remember being like, that sounds crazy. Yeah, externally you have to just be like, yep, you just have to like go along with it because that's what you do. But
Yeah.
it was like this, and like I said, that was towards the end of my time, probably in the last year, maybe in 8 months. I remember just being like, okay, that sounds a little off. Like, and obviously there was so many things that were off, but it was like I started to like when things didn't match up, and like I know I shared in the previous podcast, like when the other pastor that they were technically ordained under said something that was so opposite to what he said, I started like it was like this checks and balances thing of like, wait a second, like there were so many inconsistencies. But
Yeah.
I laugh at that because I'm like, it's like this weird like badge of honor of like no matter what they do, I'm gonna be loyal to them. Like
Yes.
and it's like a competition almost of like, oh yeah, I heard him yell at his wife yesterday, but like we all know God's grace is sufficient. Like also, have you watched The Handmaid's Tale?
No.
Oh wow, okay.
I think just honestly, I don't know.
It's
I probably should. It's just because everyone talks about it so much and they're like, we're in the Handmaid's Tale. I'm like, I don't want to
I
watch it
don't
because
yeah,
everyone talks. But
you don't
maybe
have to
I should.
obviously, but when I watched that, and anyone listening who has watched, and I get it, it was very hyped up for a long time, but when I watched it, not in the context of that that's what we're living in, when I watched The Handmaid's Tale, um do you know the premise of it at all?
A little.
A tiny bit? Okay. So like, and I'm not gonna like give spoilers if you do watch it, but essentially when I watched that, which was after I had left, of course, I forget the timing, but when I watched that show, I remember someone asking me, was like, "Are you okay, like watching that show?" Because basically what it is this like time period in history where there are people are having a hard time getting pregnant, having children, and the commanders are like the high up people in the world, and they have enough money to basically, I don't know that they're purchased, but like all the women that are found to be fertile and already have small children are kidnapped and turned into handmaids, and they are forced to have sex with these commanders with the wife present. And I was like, I am watching a movie of my life. Like it was so crazy. And also the religious component and all, like it was like it literally felt like I was watching a documentary of my life. It was crazy. So anyways, that was the context of me seeing Handmaid's Tale. So if anyone has seen it, it was very similar to what I experienced in its own way. And I also believe that if it had continued further, that was like the next level of things they were trying to do was to have me carry their child because she could not get pregnant. Both they were trying for like 10 years and they got tested and both of her tubes were blocked. And so she couldn't get pregnant like naturally. And I firmly believe that was something they were like working towards. I don't obviously know
Whoa.
for a fact, but I would not like that seemed to be like the direction it was headed in. Anyways,
Whoa.
but The Handmaid's Tale, I get you not wanting to watch it, but if you ever do, it's
Well,
very
maybe I should.
similar.
I guess I've heard so many people say like under Trump we're living in the Handmaid's Tale and
I
they're so
know.
like and then I saw a
Yes.
funny meme. I saw a funny meme the other day where it was someone said like the Handmaid's Tale is a liberal woman's fantasy, like sexual fantasy at this point, and they like went through
Went
a
through
sort of
it.
like, oh, they're like forcing us to have sex, like like,
Oh,
and it was so funny because I was like, it's
oh my
true
gosh.
the amount that liberal women post that like, oh, we're living in the Handmaid's Tale. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you
Like,
kind of want to be living in the Handmaid's Tale. It kind of sounds like this is really
sounds like a thing for you.
anyway. I thought
uh,
that was funny, but no, I've
that,
never seen it. I think
okay, yeah.
because of that, but maybe
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
I'll.
it's very intense, and if you, yeah, I mean, if you watch it or not, if you do, I'd be curious to see what you think, because it definitely, especially with the cult piece of it, it's definitely more extreme, but there is a lot of the cult themes, the language. That was another thing I wanted to touch on was the language piece of the cults,
Yeah,
where there is that group language that you're like
yeah.
expected to use, and it's like about
It's super important for the functioning of the group. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and I don't know how to, quickly explain it, but like language is so powerful, and that is what was so interesting to me in leaving was I still believe language is very powerful and it shapes things. And so it was interesting because I kind of first learned about the power of language there and then not only saw how much it like created that cult group think mind. Like everyone's speaking the same, sounding the same, and it's like I see it so much nowadays, whether it's woke ideology language, whether it is like one of my family members is just very, very into science and like
Yeah.
CDC is like their god. Like it's so interesting. Like any of these like groups or mindsets like become a thing so easily. And it's like I understand we're all human beings and we need to relate to each other and like I get all that and having we have to understand each other and language is very important. But whenever I see and hear or like the spirituality community, like it
Yeah.
just it like makes me want to throw up. Because
Yeah.
I'm like it's just like and that's one of the things I think I love about my partner and my now husband is the fact that he was so removed from like any lingo and I just loved that. What was it? Oh my gosh, what was it? Literally yesterday someone said, "Oh, I know what it was." Okay. This is so funny. Okay, the woman who performed our wedding, beautiful, such a special woman who is a friend of ours, she dresses the piece, and she happened to wear and we did not tell her what we were wearing or anything like that. She wore a beautiful black robe with gold trim, and Brian wore black and gold. And it was just, it matched perfectly. It was so beautiful. And we did not tell her this. And so this is just a perfect example. So I texted her thanking her again for everything, and I said Brian wanted to know if you knew he was going to be wearing black and gold. You had such a perfect outfit. And she goes, "The energy gift sometimes still surprises even me. Everything led me to black and gold that day." And I love that. Like, of course it did. I'm not surprised. She's very intuitive. So I read the text to Brian. He goes, "Oh, so we're just making shit up. Like, ooh, like where's it coming from? Is it dropping from the sky? Like, where's this gift?" He sort of had a whole monologue. I was just like laughing.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even like a weird thing that she said and like whatever. It was just funny because he's like, we're just making terms up now. And I'm like, this is why I fucking love you because you're just I just I don't think I could ever handle being with someone who like is coming from even though Brian and I have such similar values and beliefs of things of even spiritually and emotionally and all those things, I just love that he's not like inundated with this language that is sometimes people don't even realize they are.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that was just a funny story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally get what you mean. And I think from in my own experience, like I don't think people can really understand how much when you're in a group like that and you're given new terms, often certain words are redefined and they like mean heavier things than they do to other people. Like it's really hard even for another group. Like if I kind of learn about another group, say Scientology for example,
Yep.
right? I
Mhm.
can I can learn about all their terms but I don't understand like the weight of them and what they
Right.
mean. Like,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so it's been interesting to me in reading about other cults because I'm like I read their language and I'm like I know that this language for them is as important and meaningful and heavy as the language I learned was for me,
Right.
but it's like impossible to really get into that mind of like
100%.
the way you implicitly learn what these words mean, what they're loaded with,
Yep.
and like what they mean when you're in the group and what
Mhm.
they mean to the leader and what they imply. Like
Right.
it's
Right.
it's even for me having had the experience, it's hard to like
Mhm.
read a different group's language and kind of
Fully
understand.
grasp. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
for me that the language was such a because and I wonder I'm curious what this felt like for you in leaving because for me in leaving maybe the hardest part besides like my world shattered every I was just like
Yeah.
who am I, what do
Mhm.
I believe, I couldn't be in my own head like because I realized really quickly that I didn't know how to think. And I was only in there for 2 years. So this happened so fast. Like it happened
Yes.
in 2 years. My mind changed so much that I could only think of things in terms of all of her words, like
Mm-hmm.
extraction, she used a lot,
Yes.
receptivity,
Mm-hmm.
the feminine, all these things. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
remember all the words now, which
Right,
is so nice.
right.
But they were like the way my brain categorized the world and
Mm-hmm.
behavior into like these terms and these boxes, and like this is how the world is and this is what things mean. And
Yep.
so when I left, I was like, I don't know. Like my mind automatically just does this now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And luckily,
It's
I at least had the sort of experience spiritually enough to be able to watch my own mind.
mm-hmm.
Like I
Mm-hmm.
had that sort of separation enough to be able to
Sure.
be like, whoa, look at my mind doing this. And like I know that's not me, but like
Yep.
I don't I don't know how to change this. Like if
Right.
it can change, like it was
Mm-hmm.
scary. And
Yes.
it took a while. And I think what sped that up for me was I just stopped using all of the words entirely. Like I was just like
Mm-hmm.
and like you were saying like how Brian is so refreshing for you in that way, like it helped me a lot. I mean, Jordan's always been like, we're not very all the new age stuff we've ever been into, we like make fun of it at the same
Yeah,
time.
like make
Like
light.
it's just
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I liked about Jordan from the beginning was like he didn't take it seriously.
So
Like
serious. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, nothing
Right.
was so serious that it was
Yeah.
like our identity.
Mm-hmm.
But I found a lot of help in like just like listening to other people with like
Mm-hmm.
very different worldviews who had never heard of any of these words before in their
Yeah.
life.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what scared me was seeing a lot of people leave, but like hang on to the language. Like they were like, I'm gonna keep what feels true and like let go of the rest. And I was like, you don't know what feels true because you don't know how
You don't even
like
know.
hacked your mind has become.
Yep. It's
So
so
when you
crazy. Yeah.
left,
Mm-hmm.
because you never got your own way of thinking. Because as a child you like learned that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you went in right into this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you left, how did you sort of and maybe this goes more into your healing, but
Yeah.
like, I'm just so curious, like, how did you like learn to view the world in a new way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a big, or it was a huge process, and I relate to everything you said because I truly felt like my mind was like not, it was just like like hijacked, like it was just completely taken over, and it was crazy because like the language, like you said, these words and phrases were used so much that I was so used to saying them that it was very hard to even like feel like I was speaking for myself or like my own self. And that was one other thing that I resonated with on The Handmaid's Tale because they had a lot of phrases that they would say as greetings and as like, oh, we're hoping to get pregnant soon. Oh, blessed be or like praise be. They would say these phrases, and sometimes I jokingly say them to my mom, and she laughs. Anyways, so that was another point that I related to on that show. But coming out of it, I remember I couldn't even figure out how to like buy clothes because I didn't like for 5 years he would take me to the store and there were all these clothes rules. And so I remember going to the store by myself and like trying to figure out, okay, well it has to go down this far. And I remember being like and I was like, wait a second, like and so what helped me was I started asking says who.
Yeah.
And that was like the most helpful thing. I don't even know where I got that idea from. And I was like, okay, so if it was him saying this or her saying this or if whatever it was, and then I would figure out like, okay, is it me saying this right now, like today, or is this someone else saying this? And that helped a lot. I remember going to the first therapist that I found. It was fairly soon after. I don't even know her name. I would honestly be curious to look her up now. She was not qualified. She like was shell shocked, like listening to me. She was like, I'm like, all right, I don't think this lady can help me. She had like little ice skates hanging on her door, and I'm like, okay, I don't think. I remember going to her, and I remember like standing up, demonstrating to her like how like, do you see this sweater? Do you see how long it goes? And like, I think it should go this long, but like, I don't know. And like, should it be this like? And so I remember like I had like all these ideas, but they weren't like my ideas. They were just like so inundated in my mind. And so asking
Wait,
my,
I
mhm,
want to pause you because I want to
yeah,
understand when you, because you're describing like going to therapy or like you're starting to question this. I think it's a very powerful question, says who. Do you, are you, at the time, were you aware, like when you left, did you have the realization my mind is messed up, like I need to fix it? Or like what was the sort of,
like the aha moment
where
or
you were
something,
like,
or,
I need to go to therapy to heal from this? Or like how did you know that something was wrong
mhm.
that needed to change?
So I think one of the ways, and I may have even mentioned it on the other podcast, but when I had decided to run away, I made the plan to run away, and I was in the kitchen and I hand wrote a note saying, like, please don't ever contact me again. I left everything behind, like all this stuff. And I remember when they had left the house that night, and if I already said this, you can stop me. They
Yes, you
had,
did. Well,
okay,
they
the
told you to
receipts and they
like
told me
do
to
this
like call.
receipt
Yes,
thing.
okay. So in that moment when I like was like, oh my gosh, I still have to do that. I remember that being a huge moment where I was like, whoa, this is crazy that like they have that much control in my mind when I already had like I already knew I was leaving. I had done like that moment was like a huge realization of like I am so fucked up. Like what is going on? That was an interesting like big moment. So that I think is part of it. And then obviously I was in like pure survival mode. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a phone, like I had nothing. So I was just trying to like, so once I got settled, I think it was at that point that I was like things things such as being at that same job when I would be thinking either thoughts that they would tell me or thinking like, oh, I have to tell him this when I get home or like, and I would just kept having to snap myself out of it. Like, no, you don't. Like, what is going on? So when that was continuing to happen, or like when I was driving and I almost got into an accident multiple times from like PTSD. Like I would think that I saw their car and I would have like a full blown panic attack. So when all of these like very scary things were happening, that's when I was like, I need help. And that's when I kind of started like seeking out a therapist. So that's the shortest answer I could give to that of how I like
Okay, so
realized
then what
mhm,
happened? So then that therapist was not a
was
good.
not this is not helpful really at all. I went to her for a little while and I was like, all right. And it was interesting because like I am very smart and I am very self-aware and I knew like my mind was not okay. And so I was just trying to figure out like how do I fix this? Like how do I stop either thinking or saying the same things? And there were just so many phrases that even some of them that were and I am similar to you, I don't remember all of them, but like some of them that weren't even necessarily related to religion, like sometimes in describing things, um, he would say like, "Oh, that person's being a nutball." Like that was like a phrase he would use, and so there would be times where I might be telling a story to a friend or whatever, and I would just say one of these phrases, and I would be so
Yeah,
upset that I even said it because I'm like, "What?" Like it would be so upsetting.
yeah.
So as those things were continuing, I remember I was at work and there was actually a customer, a very sweet lady. She ended up being a hairdresser. I think she cut my hair. I didn't know her like very well, but I just kind of she seemed very sweet and we kind of clicked a little bit. And somehow at work, I was at work one night at it was a larger, nice kind of like a Whole Foods store I was a manager of at that point. And she came in and somehow, I can't even tell you how, she ended up mentioning that she had a coach that she was working with that was so helpful. And I was like, well, my therapist is useless. I was like, send me his information. I don't even know this woman. I didn't even know what coaching was, right? And so she sent me this guy's information and I did a call with him. And it's very interesting because it's not that I feel like I don't really think he had the greatest sales tactic. I felt very pressured to start. So there's definitely like a little bit of mixed feelings. However, I do feel that it was very helpful because it wasn't around religion. He wasn't a therapist. He himself had been through childhood there was a man in his neighborhood that like raped all the boys in the neighborhood. So he had major sexual trauma from a childhood age, which I had from also child age, but a little older. And so he understood on a better level than just a random therapist. And so
Mm.
he was very helpful. I will say, I do feel there are certain things that didn't help me as far as my eating disorder goes. That's something that actually never came up in the first episode, and I'm shocked. But anyways, I have mixed feelings. However, that was very helpful. And he is the one who he was the first person I told about the little baby because I finally had time to like in my brain process and get to that point. And he was the one that encouraged me to go to the police. So I'm very grateful for him for sure. And that was for sure a big step of me being able to even like process through certain things. And he really helped me to come out of that panic mode and know how to like regulate better and be able to like actually hear myself think and be able to answer questions, and it was very helpful. um so that was kind of the next step, I guess you could say, of the first therapist was not very good and then working with this person. I think I worked with him for maybe 1 year. um yeah, it was interesting. Hmm. Yeah, the what I also was curious, I know that you had your food journey, but it wasn't, to my understanding from what you shared, it wasn't in correlation with the cult. Like it wasn't because of the cult, correct?
Well,
It's probably a hard question.
I think about this a lot. I think that the food journey would not have happened if I had not been in the cult.
Okay, that makes sense. So, got it.
I think that I joined the cult in August of 2020, and I
Mm-hmm.
started the food stuff in 2021, like in
Okay. Yep.
April-ish. Uh, and I think that it was a couple things. I think part of it was like a self-protection.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that my body, it was kind of the first time she didn't like that I was gaining weight, that I was like doing this food thing.
Yep.
So she wasn't like a advocate for it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I think there were a bunch of things happening, like part of it was true. I needed to eat more food.
Yep.
Um, but like 10 pounds worth of food, not 100 plus. But
Yeah.
like part of it was true.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, I think certainly would never have happened without social media. Like
Mm.
I think in like it's the context of the whole time, right? It's COVID, so I'm
Yeah.
not seeing my family. I'm isolated in
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver alone. I'm like with no one besides Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that I'm not eating enough food, so I start to eat more. When I start eating more, I feel amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Happier, better, everything got way better for the first like 10 to 15 pounds. I am in the cult, and the leader was not happy and kept trying to like tell me I was off.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood up to her because I thought she was
Mm.
overweight, and I was like, she was crazy. She was eating like raw vegan. I was like, you're nuts. You don't know. So don't tell me. Like, that was my hard line. It was kind of the first time I was like, no.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And she was like, you seem whatever, closed here or something, whatever her words were. And I was like, I am.
Sorry.
And that was the moment where she changed her tactic with me. She became like my best friend instead
Mm.
of my
Mm-hmm.
like she kind of laid off. Like
Yep.
um and but I was in the cult mind. So
Right.
because I was like in this cult mindset of like, it was very tantric, right? Almost in nature, where
Mm.
it was like everything is good. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no bad, there's no good, there's no evil, there's no good or bad. Everything is um pleasurable. Like I can get off on every part of life. Every so
Mm-hmm.
there's
Oh, I'm gonna kink this. I'm gonna
yeah.
alchemize everything. God.
So in my head, there's
Yes.
no longer like right or wrong, good or bad.
Right.
it's just the truth. And this is a
Mm-hmm.
whole other thing we could talk about for hours, is like
Mm-hmm.
I was convinced that I knew the truth, but in that
Mm-hmm.
world, truth just kind of becomes like either what the leader says or what I just think that I feel. And in the cult, I'm so, who knows what I'm tapping into at that point, spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
energetically, in my body. Like, it's all so dysregulated.
Right.
I'm like, this is true. And then I think it was true to start eating more, but then everybody
Mm-hmm.
on social media was super encouraging and super like, people were like, this reminds me of eating disorder recovery. I
Mm-hmm.
never would have really gone into that, but
To
then I
that
went into
path.
this whole,
Yeah.
like, eating disorder recovery world is like another cult world. It's
Mm-hmm.
really messed up, a lot of it. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the other thing was like, I was like, well, I'm gonna trust the doctors. And all of the doctors, because they're afraid of like fat phobia,
Fat
they have this
shaming. Yeah.
body positivity
Yep.
movement. Not one doctor, I kid you not, like I saw so many doctors during this time because I was gaining weight rapidly and I was
Right.
having all these symptoms.
Issues. Yeah. Yeah.
Not one doctor was like, hey, I think it's because you're getting really fat and this is like not good for your body. Not one
Wow.
person. I was like, I've gained whatever, 40 pounds in
Yeah.
the last 3 months. And they were all like,
Hmm.
that's great. Like, no one was like, hey,
Right.
what are
Like
you
maybe.
doing? What's
Mm-hmm.
going on? Like, no one was like, this is not good. They were all like, wow, I'm impressed. I'm impressed you're like overcoming this eating disorder that in retrospect, I don't even think I had.
Right. Right. You probably just weren't eating enough for a long time,
I wasn't eating
unintentionally, and
enough,
then
but
yeah.
I was eating. And they said I had orthorexia because I was
Mm-hmm.
like afraid of Doritos. And
Right.
now I'm kind of like, I don't think that, I don't think that that was
I don't know that
wrong.
that's orthorexia. Yeah.
But at the time, they were like, an orthorexia, they classify as a form of anorexia. So I was officially
Wow.
diagnosed with anorexia by a doctor, a top doctor in the
Wow.
United States. They wrote, she has anorexia, and I had to do a body scan, I do all these sorts of things.
Wow.
And all these things were coming off wrong in my labs. It was
Yeah.
absolutely nuts.
This.
Like the symptoms I was having
Mm-hmm.
were crazy. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
bloated
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. I had such bad edema. It was like pitting. I could press my
You said
legs.
you
It would
would,
like
yeah.
pit.
Mm-hmm.
I had heartburn. I was like puking in the middle of the night because had to sleep sitting up. Like when I tell you, like now when I say it, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what was I thinking? What was wrong?
Mm-hmm.
But I know what I was thinking. It was that n- I was getting off on all of life. So it
Yeah.
was
So you
like,
were,
it
yeah.
didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What does it matter if you're like, this is
Yep.
good, fat is good? What's wrong with all the people who think fat is bad? They're the wrong ones. Like, it
Yeah.
all became so, and
Mm-hmm.
all the people around me, all the doctors I saw were like, this is great. And
Mm-hmm.
not even to be unfair, like, I think if I had seen someone who told me I was wrong, I probably would have just shut them out.
Right. You
I
probably,
wouldn't have
because you were
listened.
set on your, yeah. Yeah.
I was sure that this was the truth and this was the right way. And,
Yeah.
I had no concept of like when I started, and it's weird. It's kind of like the same thing as getting into a cult. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when I started gaining weight, I didn't think, it never entered my mind it was a possibility I could gain 100 pounds. I was blown away. Like I did a story being like, maybe I could gain 30 pounds, and that was
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me.
Right.
I didn't really think I would gain weight. And when I had gained like 12 pounds and I felt better, I was like, wow. And it was this sort of like everything was amazing. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel amazing. Wow. And it felt like I could stop at any time.
Mm-hmm.
But then as it kept going, I got deeper into like the eating disorder world. I was seeing this
Right.
eating disorder coach who was
Yep.
basically like, it was really culty. It was like, she was like, I was like, well, what about like the importance of a balanced meal? And she's like, that's just a belief. And I was like, okay, but what about like carbs and fat and protein and like eating them together? She's like, that's a belief. So it was like all this stuff just became like beliefs. Like there's no, and I was like, do you mean I can eat like chips and queso for a meal? And she's like, yeah, that's fine. What's wrong with that? And I was like, well, this is the woman who's like healed and she's the coach, so she says so. So I maybe I'm wrong, and I'm in the cult.
Right.
So I'm like
Yeah.
so willing to be like, maybe I'm the
Question
wrong one.
yourself. Yeah, yeah,
And and
yeah.
I didn't realize, I always thought like I could just lose weight again. I didn't realize
Mm,
that like
mm-hmm.
getting so heavy could turn on all of these like health issues, which is I think what happened to me
Sure, sure.
was just
Mm-hmm.
like it just became way too much. Like there were
Yeah.
a lot of signs and I was
Yep.
just like overriding all of them.
Yep.
And then I didn't realize I couldn't just like reverse it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully I can completely
Over
reverse
time.
it,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
can't
Mm-hmm.
at the same
Right,
time, like
right.
I have stretch marks on my arms, like you
Yep.
can't see them on camera, but like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's things where I'm like, this is never gonna go, like I can't just go back to my like little perky
Mm-hmm.
boobs. Like they're all, you know, like,
Yeah.
and part of that's fine, it's life, but part of it's also like,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't know. It kind of goes
Mm-hmm.
back to that thing. It's like what kind of crazy things could you do?
Right.
Like,
Right.
that sounds nuts. I'm like, why did I do that? What was I
Yep.
thinking? But
What
I
was that?
did it,
Yeah.
and not only did I do it, but it seemed reasonable enough to everybody that all these people online were like cheering me on. Jordan
Mm-hmm.
was so supportive. He like
Yep.
totally believed, like I believed it. We believed that this
Right.
is a good thing.
That there
Like,
was, yeah.
oh, we were
Wow.
going. Why
Yeah.
did you ask me that? We were
Oh
talking
no,
about
it's
you.
fine. I was saying how I was shocked that this didn't come up in the first episode, but there's so much and I understand it didn't, but
Oh,
I
because
was
yeah.
curious. Yeah, I was curious if the food piece was tied to the cult. And I just wanted to briefly touch on it. We don't have to go on a whole tangent with it, even though there's a lot there. I was just going to share and I was curious, even if anyone listening, that can be another sign of cult behavior is when someone is starting to control your food. And so that started very gradually. At first, it was like you had to eat 3 fruits a day. And then, he would count the fruit bowl. And if you didn't eat them, like you were in trouble. That's what it started with. Then it started with like they went vegan for a while and he would cook all the food and it was portioned out. And then it was like a rotation of breakfasts. And some of these breakfasts was like disgusting. Like all you were one day was polenta, but that was it. It was literally just a huge bowl of it's like grits, but like
Ew.
that's
Yeah,
it.
I've
That was
had it.
it.
It's just
Yeah.
like plain
It's just
polenta.
like plain yellow cornmeal. It was just like gross. Um, Muesli, which also is like gross in my opinion, was another one. I love eggs. I couldn't wait for the day when it was egg day. Anyways, it was just crazy. Like it got on this whole rotate, but again, that group think like my best friend and her husband were living in the basement. I was living upstairs. We were all on this breakfast rotation. Like it just, again, it was gradual, but it slowly infiltrated. And then, when I had first, one of the earlier grooming food things was that I had struggled with coping with emotional stress from my childhood and my dad drinking alcohol and my mom being depressed and all of that through food. And I had gained a lot of weight as a teenager. Like I was probably 220 pounds at 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I was put on diets at like 12 years old. I had a lot of really messed up food things from a child
Mhm.
and, or from childhood. And so when I first went to the church, the cult, I had just started going to the gym by myself. I asked my parents, can I have my own shelf in the fridge? I had started making all these positive changes for myself. I was feeling great. I had lost like 25 pounds in a healthy way. And they were both significantly overweight. Like he was 350 pounds. Granted, he was 6'2", used to be a football player. He's a big person. She was 5 foot exactly. And she also weighed almost 300 pounds. Like they were not small
Wow.
people. They were very overweight, right? And
Okay.
so here I was, their new like protege or whatever, and I was going to the gym on my own, doing these things, and I had
Mhm.
been losing weight on my own. And then I remember one of those key moments was they ordered a bunch of cupcakes from this bakery and I wasn't really eating like desserts and stuff like that. I wasn't like no sugar, but like I remember being like I genuinely didn't want one. And they were like, "Oh, are you like Miss Goody Two Shoes over there? Like you're too good to like." And that was just another of those little small seeds where it was like anything that had to do with me or what I wanted to do was always like being tested or pushed or whatever. And so all these little micro food things in the beginning gradually shifting by like the year 3 it was like it shifted where they wanted to lose weight now. So everybody went on an extreme diet called HCG, where you take hormones to trick your body that you're pregnant and you only eat 500 calories a day.
What?
Hmm. Google it. Anyways, so I did that for 30
Wait,
days.
even him?
Yes,
Men can do that too?
men can take it.
Whoa.
So he did lose a lot of weight because men typically can lose quick easier than women.
Yeah.
And so he did lose a lot of weight and he was very excited about it and she did as well. And I also did, but I lost even faster than them because I was younger. And I remember how they were always like shocked at how much I could eat. And I look back and I'm just like, I just have to get over it because I'm like, dude, my metabolism was so much better. I was hungry all the time. I could eat. I felt like whatever. Anyways,
Yeah.
so that turned into them being obsessive over my body. And so, I mean, I have pictures I could share with you, but they would take photos every week and measure every inch of my body, like every limb, everything. And I lost like 70 pounds in a matter of like 2 months because I was on this
Whoa.
extreme like diet. Like I remember taking like a Ziploc bag to work with like cucumbers and celery and apples and like that's all I ate the whole day. Like anyways, it was so extreme and I lost so much weight. The lowest I got to was like 149, which for me was very significant because I was 220 as a teenager, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it was just all connected to the control and the abuse and everything. And so then when I was at that size, he just started to make fun of me. Said I was skin and bones, I had chicken wings on my back, like he started to make fun of everything, even though he was the one that like it was so confusing. And so when I left, it very much that's why I resonated with your food journey was because when I left, I didn't have the language of like all in or whatever terminology that people
Yeah.
nowadays label it as, but I was like, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't eat. And so
Yeah.
I just ate whatever I wanted. And it was a lot of things like foods I hadn't had in years that I was like craving. So like mac and cheese, pizza, chips and salsa, like things that are just
It's
very,
comforting.
yes, like a
Yeah.
lot of comfort foods, a lot of highly caloric calorie foods, how do you say that word?
Hmm.
And so that combined with the stress, with the work, like all those factors, I just started gaining weight. And I didn't really notice at first because I was also having to like buy new clothes. So everything just kind of evolved. And so I ended up gaining like I think by the time I had left, like 149 was my lowest ever, but by the time I left, I think I was like 175 maybe. And so I gained a lot of weight, like higher than even before I was there. And that was just so overwhelming because I'm like, and he used to say so many things of like, oh, you would never, if you weren't here, you would never be able to keep this weight off. And like, oh, he would say it was such a mind fuck.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. And so I felt that I was so out of control with eating that I never had bulimia. I never like did that, but I felt that I had an eating disorder because I'm like I can't control this, and I was very upset. And so I went online. I found someone who was an eating disorder coach, and I don't think she made it worse. I really don't. She was very much like, okay, if ice cream is a craving you have, then keep it in the house. Like go to the store, have it on hand. That way you don't feel scared that you'll never have access to it. You have it on hand, and if you want some, have some. And if you eat 5 containers, we'll talk about it. Like, and I never ended up getting to that point or anything. So I do feel that it was helpful, but it's just been like a long process where I think my body also really associated being smaller with the trauma.
Yeah.
And my body was just like, oh no, we are not letting this happen to us again. And it was just like a protection thing. And so it's just, there's been so much with the food piece for, from being there to, I mean, literally starting from probably being 8 years old and the doctor being like, oh, she needs to be on a diet, you know, like starting from then.
Yeah.
So, but what I feel now is very grateful because I've been with my partner, my now husband, as of last week, that he has seen me in many stages. You know, he saw me when I was like 60 pounds less than I am right now,
Yeah.
which is very significant and feels huge to me. And yet people will say, like, oh, make sure you're with someone who is going to stick around, like when your body changes when you have babies. And like, I'm like, well, we've already done all that. We don't have a baby to show for it, but okay. So, anyways, I feel grateful that like he is understanding that of what I've been through and that he's not just with me for what I look like. He's still attracted to me. I feel that I will feel much better, you know, not weighing as much as I do now, but I feel that I've healed so much in the sense that like I was not like I need to go on a diet for 2 years before we have our wedding. Like,
Yeah.
nope, here I am. I think I'm beautiful. I know he
Yeah.
thinks I'm beautiful. Like, and I have also done a lot of work in this past calendar year with tracking my food, getting my nutrients right, actually working with someone who could actually, it has truly helped me. And I have lost almost 20 pounds and I feel so much better. So I'm
Yeah.
like in a trajectory of where I want to be. But I did want to mention of that the food control is also very much connected to cults.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I was, yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really interesting. I think that, I mean, it's just so beautiful. Like, I had the same, right? Jordan saw me when I was so little, like, was when
Yes.
we got together, and
Yep.
he was attracted to me the whole time. And people, I like
Mm-hmm.
forget like, I told the whole story to someone recently, and she was like, and you were like, with your husband? Like, your husband stayed around through all of that? And I was like, of course he did. But, like, it didn't, it never, like,
Didn't even
occurred
like,
to
mm-hmm.
me. Um, but it should be that. But I do wonder, so I'm like, if Jordan had gained that much weight, would I have been just like, I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard.
100 pounds. That's right. It's so, yeah.
He did gain weight when I gained weight. He gained like 50 pounds to
Yep.
my 150. So nuts. We were looking at photos the other day, and I'm not like, I don't know. It's just so weird. I was like, how did anybody take us seriously at this time? Like, we were just like, I don't know. I found this story we made where Jordan was just like very matter of factly, like, we both gained weight over the last year, and like, we call each other Tubble Up. And I was like, how did
Audible.
anybody watch
How
this
did,
and take us seriously? But I do think, like, I don't know. I think I've been amazed at like people that have followed my work online
mm-hmm.
for like, I don't know, 6 years.
Yeah.
And I've changed so much during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But what people have said is like your essence kind of is always there, you know?
Yeah.
Like it
Mm-hmm.
stays the same. And I'm glad that I know that my food journey did help some people in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of ways. Like I'm glad that it did.
Yeah.
I just look back at it and I'm just
Like,
like,
wow. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
probably the hardest one for me to
Mm.
really let go because I have a
Mm-hmm.
like there are some days where I'm just like why couldn't I just not have done like
Mm-hmm.
just but
Yeah.
but I do yeah I think there's also so much that's associated with safety and weight, and so it doesn't surprise me at
Mm-hmm.
all. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not an eating disorder that when you left you were just like feed me
I'm
because you had
starving.
been so starving,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then like of course would make total sense to me that your body would want to hang on to that and just be like.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting in my process was that like I gained all that weight
Mm-hmm.
because the all-in people had told me that it would stop. Like that was the whole narrative was like you gain weight and then your body hits a plateau and it feels safe and then it will stop. And so that was the other thing was like I couldn't stop gaining weight because I was afraid I hadn't yet hit the plateau and then my body wouldn't feel safe enough and I hadn't healed. So I thought I was
Yeah.
like
You were,
healing more and more.
yeah.
But what was actually scary was like and I think that I don't know, like I had gotten to around 200 pounds, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
short. I'm 5'3".
You're 5'3". Yeah. Yes.
But
Yep.
like it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of weight. Like I almost
Sure.
doubled my body weight,
Yeah.
and I remember I was at like around 200, maybe like just over 200 pounds when we moved.
Mm.
And then we went into such a stressful place because we bought this house. It didn't have clean water, didn't have this, like, we were eating microwave meals. It was just crazy.
Yep.
I gained 40 more pounds without knowing that I had gained it.
Wow. Isn't it
And
crazy how
that,
quick you can like that
well, you
yeah.
can't, like, when you're so little,
Yeah.
everything shows up so much more. But when
Sure.
I
'Cause
was already
there's
that
yeah.
I didn't know,
Wow.
which is nuts. Like
That's
I
crazy.
only knew because I went to the doctor and they had a scale. I was for a gynecology appointment because I was
Mm-hmm.
bleeding like
Yep.
crazy. And they had a scale. And me and Jordan were both like, "Oh, let's step on the scale." We were like left in the room alone, and I was 248 pounds, and I was
Wow.
like, I was like,
Wow.
how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan also, I don't forget what he weighed, but
Yeah.
he weighed a
Yep.
lot. And he was just
Right.
like, and
Yep.
I think we both had this moment of like, okay, like this is,
Mm-hmm.
and that was where I plateaued. But did I I don't know if I plateaued, like subconsciously, my
So
mind was.
interesting.
But what
Yeah.
was fascinating was when I left the cult, I lost 10 pounds.
Wow. Yeah.
That was the only time I started to lose weight. I left,
Wow.
I
Yep.
didn't do anything different. I lost 10 pounds. The next month, I lost another 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's
Wow. That's
happening?
interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like for everything you shared, obviously we'll never know the what ifs, but I do see how the cult and you being in it affected your mindset in general. Even though
Yeah.
the food thing was your own thing, you were in the cult, you were in all of that. It's very
Yeah, it's
interesting.
hard to
Yeah. It's
separate the
hard to
two.
decipher. Yeah.
It's like you can't really be like, it's one or the other. Like, it's not because of it, but it's not,
Right.
I don't think I would have done it had I not been in there
Right.
and in that
Yeah.
mindset. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you, uh, so kind of lead us through like more of your healing because I'm
Hmm.
so curious how you got to this point of at least you seem to be in this place where you don't like you told me in the last episode you told us that like you don't even really think about it anymore. You feel like you're in a new life.
Hmm.
How do you get to that place?
Yeah. Great question. So I would say the first, so like 20, so I ran away in December of 2016. So December, so almost 2017. So I would say the first like 2017, 2018, 2019. I would say like the first 3 years after leaving was really hard. Like really so much of those mental triggers, the PTSD. Like I would be like terrified, like in my shower. Like they used to watch me shower and critique how I shower. Like there were so many things, and I lived alone. Like there were so
Man,
many times where I would just genuinely be terrified that like he was gonna just like walk in the bathroom, like all those things. So, anyways, all that to say, that was very, like, I don't want to downplay, or even if someone's listening to this, be like, oh, she looks so fine and normal. Like, I wish that was me. Like, I don't know who will even hear this, but just knowing that, like, it was really hard for, like, the first, probably, like I said, 2 to 3 years.
yeah. I
Um,
think that's important for people to know because a lot of
yeah,
times in healing stories, people gloss over like
yes,
how hard it was.
I agree. And like I said, like, even now, I feel like I'm in a different chapter, and that's where it's like that fine line where I do want people to know and hear something relatable because it is so easy to be like, "Oh, I'm fine now." Okay,
Yeah.
yes, but it was horrible for years. Like it was very, very scary. It was very, everything from like driving home different directions to make sure that I wasn't being followed to, still working a public job in the same town as them. Like I want people to know like it's it wasn't like I had like the privilege to just like move away and never think about like it was very real life things that I had to be aware of. They did come to my job twice and try to like not really get to me, but in a sense. However, thankfully there was a lot of support in the store where the other managers basically made sure I was safe. So there was a lot of very real time like intense things in the first few years. And then I also want to, speak about the sexual piece where when you've been sexually exploited for years, I feel that there's a lot of ways that people cope with that and try to make sense of it and figure it out and reclaim their sexuality. And I feel like it's important to say that there's no one way of doing that. And everyone I think is different in how that they handle that. And so for me, it was very hard at first because I remember feeling like I needed to somehow have some type of sexual experiences that would like erase the bad ones. And I think what's interesting is that I don't know how long it was. I think it might have been about a year that I finally was like, okay, I want to have some type of sexual experience. So I didn't have any sexual experience for like a year. Um, And some people have the opposite reaction where they feel like they need to have a lot of sexual experiences like right away. But for me, I was just in a survival situation. So the other thing that I wanted to share is around the fact that so I decided I'm like, oh, I'll go on a dating app, I'll see if I meet anyone, etc. So I had a few sexual experiences, and yet it was very, very triggering, and it was very hard because it was like essentially I had only had abusive sexual encounters with this couple, which is like crazy for years. And so I didn't know like what was normal or what wasn't, or, you know, and our body remembers things. So it was like my body would think that like it was really bad. So, it was really, really hard. And so and that's also why I'm incredibly grateful for my now husband, because I truly feel that if I had encountered the wrong person in this time, I very easily could have been controlled. I know this because I was not better yet. Like it was not an overnight thing. And so I very easily, like when I think about, Brian, when I met him, I literally told him, like, I do not want a relationship. Do not even try. Like, I was very, very like, listen, I just want to fuck buddy. Like,
Yeah.
and so he kind of was like, okay, well, I wasn't looking for a relationship either. I just got out of one. I'm just kind of looking to meet people and make friends and connections and just see what happens. Like he was very chill, but um I have thought about the fact that if he wanted to, he could have exploited me so easily. And I'm very grateful that it was him and not someone else that I encountered and had a connection with, because I was still very vulnerable. Even though I was getting help and I was getting better, I still didn't have like a full compass of my own not even truth, but like what was coming from me and what wasn't, and what made me feel safe and what didn't, because there was all these weird parallels where the sex piece with the people that abused me, it was like the only way I felt connection or validated or felt special or felt like any of these things. So I was still like rebuilding that outside of that for myself. So to have any, it very easily could have like gone back to that, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say, if that makes
totally.
sense.
Hmm.
So I just want to say, like, for me, I had sexual experiences, multiple, but not like a large amount, because I didn't really feel like it was gonna help. It was very interesting. Again, I'm always curious how people, what their experience is. Um, and I really feel grateful because I know of people who really get exploited and end up even being like pimped out, or like just really bad things can happen. And I could have seen something like that potentially happening. So anyways, all that to say, that was within maybe 2 to 3 years. And then I really, really just Brian and I became really good friends. We didn't even have sex throughout all of COVID. We literally just talked, and stayed friends. I moved away. And so I really just was focusing on myself and my own healing, like a lot of it in my mind of like, what do
In
I
these
feel?
first few years, were you going to therapy? Like when did you first see the first
I think
therapist?
the first therapist was within the first calendar year. I think it
Okay.
was fairly soon. Like I was
Right.
like on a mission to like get better. Like I
Yeah,
basically
but
was,
but what I'm
yeah,
kind of been interested in is like you
the
start doing these
timeline.
things, and I
Hmm.
I relate to this for different areas of my life. It's like you might be seeing someone, but you're not necessarily really getting better. Like some
Yes,
things might be help,
yes,
but like
yes.
nothing's
Yep,
really
yep.
changing.
Right. So correct. So I started seeing someone in that first year. It wasn't really helping. I started seeing the first coach I started seeing was in early 2018. So it was about 2017, about 1 year out. You know what I mean? Approximately, because I left in December. So like about 1 year out. And that's when I really started seeing some shifts and like some change for myself mentally. And then in the third year, is when, and I don't think I ever touched on this, the third year is when I really kind of became exposed to through Instagram. Because mind you, I didn't have any social media for
Right.
all of those years. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, Instagram is a thing. Like I didn't even have one. I didn't know. So somehow I like started opening up accounts and all these things. And I, I honestly, I couldn't, it's so funny actually, because thinking back, somehow I saw a comedy video. His content has drastically changed now, but somehow I saw a comedy video making fun of like spiritual people. And I saw this video and I thought it was hilarious, and it just like made me laugh, and I hadn't like laughed much in like years, and I thought it was so funny. And so I started following this comedian, which then led me to finding other people they were in, which I now know is more of like a new age spirituality type world.
Huh.
And I am very grateful that I didn't, again, get sucked into that too deep. I did enjoy it, and it was refreshing to hear people that had a connection with some type of spirituality, but it wasn't the same religion as what I grew up in and from the cult and
Totally.
all of that. So I was definitely, and when I say involved, not in any formal sense, but I gravitated towards that more,
Mhm.
and I felt more resonant to that. It's so interesting because my best friend, when she left with the baby, she gravitated to church right away, still, but a different church. And I found that so fascinating. She doesn't anymore. But for me, I did not want to go anywhere near any type of church. And yet I still felt that I had some connection with God on some level. And so I was drawn towards the spiritual community.
Which is also interesting you didn't lose that. Because I lost that this last time. Like, I was just, for a year or so at least, I was just like, I don't know what I believe if I believe in anything. Because, like, how could I have been led into this place? So, how did you still feel that connection? Do you think, like, did you still felt like, I remember you had said you kind of felt like you were led out of there.
Yeah, I think that was a part of it, that the fact of like seeing that pastor and what he had said to me was so like direct, and then that woman from my childhood telling me she was
Right.
praying, like all those pieces just were like kind of wild. And so I just really felt that like these people were so evil, they were not like of God. And I had that
Yeah.
distinction of like, okay, I still felt that God in some way was trying to protect me and help me get out of the situation. And so
Got
I
it.
think that's how I kind of preserved that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Hmm.
when does it start to turn? Because you're going through these first 3 years. Obviously, like anything is improving, but like, is there a moment where you feel like things really started to shift?
Excuse me. Um, I got a tickle in my throat. I think that I do feel like whenever I left my job and decided to reopen my piano studio, that was a big shift because I was no longer like in this work environment that I never would have been in otherwise.
Yeah,
And I think that was a big reclamation of my power in a sense of like, okay, I'm gonna take this thing back that they like told me I couldn't do, and I'm gonna make even more money than what I think that was a big turning point. And also it created a lot more time for me to really be with myself and be able to like go to the gym, go outside, like, and this was around, so I did that in 2019. So this is about, so 2017, 18, so it's like 3.5 to 4 years out. And then
yeah,
COVID hits.
right.
And I remember during COVID, I worked with a breathwork facilitator
Uh,
on Zoom, and we did a lot of breathwork sessions, and I have my thoughts on it where I part of me truly feels like I don't even think that did anything. Like part of me feels like all we were doing was like almost like getting high off of breath work, crying, and like then
yeah,
what? That like it I don't know that it was really very integrative in real time. I feel like it was I like I'm it's very interesting.
well, I was curious because sometimes I've heard if you're holding a lot of trauma like that, it can really not be useful at all. It can actually hurt
And it
sometimes.
can make it worse.
Bring,
Yeah,
yeah,
yes. And so that was interesting because I don't know that it helped anything, but I was, who knows? I mean, maybe just like for because also like even just being able to physically cry was something I could like hardly ever do. So even it was just the act of being able to do that, I don't know. I don't feel like it really did much, but I went through that. And then I do feel something that was quite impactful was, and I feel like it's such a buzzword thing, but it was an excellent course. It was called, um, it was a 8-week trauma and somatics course. It
yeah,
was very helpful because it was, and it was talking about how things like plant medicine and breath work and these things are oftentimes just these like out of body coping mechanism things that are not doing anything. And oftentimes you don't even need to talk through every little thing that happened to you, but you just have to be able to be present in your body of what you're experiencing and working from a more somatic approach. And so it was actually very helpful. And I was so glad I did that. And I feel like that was probably one of the most helpful things out of all the coaching and therapy and, you know, books and self-help things that I did for those 3 years, three-ish,
What do
four
you think
years.
that that taught you to do exactly? Like, what was so helpful about it?
I think what was so helpful about it was I became more aware of my body and what I was experiencing in my body. And I think
Hmm.
the other things I did before that weren't as body focused. They were more like here focused.
Yeah.
And so I think that that was one of the most helpful things. And then the second most helpful thing was I feel like it brought a lot of clarity as to why I almost felt like some of the breath work or other things weren't doing anything because it was from here up. And the
Hmm.
somatic stuff was more being able to be more in my body and work through things on a more physical level because our body really stores things. So
Hmm.
I think that was the two most helpful things.
Well, I think what I'll say about breathwork for everybody else is like I did back in 2018 have a great experience with breathwork where I had a lot of anxiety from my brother's accident that had lasted for, it was 7 years at that point. It was just like
Hmm.
I would keep reimagining the accident. Like I just, no matter how much therapy I went to or yoga I did, like I still had this.
Yep.
And doing a lot of breath work that year, it was gone. It was like,
Wow.
it
Yeah.
really did help. But I think in retrospect, it helped because like breath work is supposed to get into the limbic system, like it's supposed to bypass the conscious brain.
Right.
But I think that I didn't have quite enough trauma, like held, layered up at the
Hmm.
time to, or like I had less, I had enough for it to be effective, not too
Hmm.
much for it to not be effective. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I
Yeah, it was
think
like a right
like
amount.
I
Hmm.
think there's if there's too much, if you're too dysregulated, I'll
Hmm.
say, I don't think that it would be helpful. And actually,
Hmm.
like over the past few years, since I've left the cult, I've had the thought sometimes of like breathwork really helped my nervous system back in
Hmm.
2018, but I've had the sense of like I'm not, it's too much.
Yeah.
And it's only very recently that I've started to wonder, like, I think maybe I could
Some
handle it
form
now,
of
but
it.
I'm
Yeah.
still,
Hmm.
it was such a part of the cult too that I'm still sort of like,
Yes. Yep.
we went into
Yeah.
crazy experiences through breathwork. And so,
Hmm.
um, so I think there's like these moments, like, sometimes plant medicine does help people, but
I actually have something about that, but go ahead.
I tend to lean more though to the side of like, I don't,
Yeah. Yep.
like it's not, I don't think for most people most of the time it's very
Hmm.
useful.
Yep.
Um but
Yeah.
yeah, and I think too that the nervous system healing, which is what happens with the somatic stuff,
Hmm.
um it also just does take time, right? Like there is that factor.
That's what I was gonna say about the. I'm glad you said that because I don't think Brian will ever have any concept of how much he's helped me heal. Because when I first left this situation, if I did the smallest thing wrong or made any error, I was literally like screamed at for hours, given silent treatment. Like it was horrible. And whenever I first left, that was a big part of my healing process was working on not being a people pleaser because that's what I had done for years to survive. And so I
Yeah.
had to like really work through that. And so with Brian, I mean, I couldn't even give you a specific example, but like, or there's so many examples I could give, but something as simple as like leaving the house and, oh, I left my phone inside. I that would have sent me into like a full-blown panic attack like year one. Like, oh my
Mhm.
God, what is he gonna do? He's gonna like I would be like panicking. And so he has in 8 years has never once even gotten remotely annoyed at me if I forget something, if we have to turn around, if I've done, and I'll be like, oh, sorry. He's like, why are you saying sorry? He's like, it's fine. You didn't do anything wrong. And he has said that for years. And it's now the times of me feeling like even saying sorry is so minimal, but like, it's just, though it has literally, I can feel my nervous system healing, but it has taken years to the
Yeah.
point where it's no longer like the fight or flight that I was living in for years is just honestly mind blowing to me because of how extreme it was. You were expected to anticipate their needs and be on point and be on guard and be all these things that if you did the smallest error, you were in huge trouble. So you were always like, on guard. And so anyone who's been through trauma and you have those PTSD or whatever it might be labeled, those nervous system reactions, I it takes time. And that's the frustrating part is there's no magical thing, but what I would say is making sure you're around people that are not doing those same things to you
Yeah.
so that you can help your brain reprogram that, oh, that's not an emergency. Oh, I'm not going to be literally screamed at and told I'm a stupid N-word for an hour. Like,
Yeah.
so it takes time. And I don't know, like how I was sharing with being in the spiritual community. Um, Again, I'm super grateful I didn't get like on this sucked into anything too crazy. However, I did go to Peru and do ayahuasca with shamans in Peru. And
Hmm.
I this was this was in 2018. So this was in the fall of 2018. I went by myself, meaning like I didn't travel with anyone. I met up with a group there and it was a yoga retreat in the Sacred Valley of Peru. It was absolutely beautiful. It was very well organized, and it was with like it was the oldest living shamans in the Sacred Valley with a specific lineage of this practice, and they were so sweet. And it was a husband and wife and their son, and they facilitated it. And I went because I was hoping that it would help with the PTSD from this situation. And so when I went, like I had a very positive experience. I didn't have like a bad experience as some people can have. And I feel very curious. Like I truly wish I could have had like a scan of my brain or something before or after because I'm just so intrigued. Because when I was having the experience, I could see like all of these white like beings. They almost look like aliens. They're hard to describe, but they had like white eyes and like they were swirling around and it was as if I could see like a scan of my brain and they were like, "Don't worry, we're just fixing your brain from all what happened." And I was like, whoa. And so, like, I don't know if I imagined that. Like, I have no
Yeah.
idea because I was going there with the intention of healing because I felt like my brain was just like messed up. Um, and I don't have some like drastic story of like, and I never felt this again. Nothing like that. I don't regret going, but I'm also I don't feel like it was so life changing of like, oh my God, like everyone should like. I really don't feel ever like I feel if anything, I like I mentioned, I'm grateful that I didn't then like I'm doing ayahuasca 20 times. Like I know people who have done like hundreds of ayahuasca ceremonies. I'm like, why are you doing that? Like I
No.
don't believe in that at all, and I think it's dangerous. I think it's not what it's meant for. But I am very grateful that I went. I think I did it very smart. I had very good people holding the space for it or whatever, and I do feel grateful that I did that. Um, but the other thing I was going to share is the fact of I was very intrigued, and this was years later, so this was not right away. This was in 2021. Yep, 2021. I was working with a Thai massage therapist, and he was a very wonderful gentleman, and he shared with me about microdosing mushrooms to help with some of the symptoms I was having of just not feeling able to focus, feeling very scattered, feeling still some of those PTSD symptoms. And so I tried microdosing, which is a very small amount. You don't feel high or anything. And that was very helpful. And I didn't do it long term, but I'm very grateful and I felt very intrigued to learn how to grow it myself. And so I did that and I that was a whole thing and it was so much work. I
I didn't know you
studied,
could do
read books. Yes. I grew my own, like a few different strains, and like sold them for a while. And and then Brian and I did some together, and it was so special because he is very wise and very intuitive, and sometimes he'll have a hard time with words, but whenever we did those together, he was like, all of a sudden he was just like, I want you to laugh when you want to laugh. If you want to cry, I want you to cry. Like, if I don't want you to feel like you have to be fake. I want you to be able to be your genuine self. And like, he was saying all of these things that was so true of like, for so long I had to just perform. And like, and he was like, and after we were done with our experience, whatever, he was expounding more, where he was like, I think what triggered it for me is, while we were in the experience, he heard me laugh at one point, but he's like, I felt like you were just laughing to like appease me, or like, oh, haha, okay, that's funny. He's probably right, because I was probably thinking about something else, and but trying to like, oh yeah, that's funny, babe, but I'm like thinking about this. Like, I don't know what. And
Yeah.
that triggered it for him, where he was like, I don't want you to feel like you have to be fake with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have used it so sparingly. I think three times maybe over 8 years, like very minimal, but it's been very, and I'm so hesitant to even recommend it to anyone, because I feel like it has to be used so carefully. You have to really know what you're doing, know what, like, I wasn't even planning to go into all this, but it has helped me, but it's not
Yeah.
something that I use often at all. And it is, I just feel like there's so much abuse of these substances, especially in the spiritual community, that I'm like very hesitant of even speaking about it. But it is something that I feel like, if used well, it can be helpful for people in certain contexts, even if it's just microdosing or a very small amount. So, anyways, that is another part of that has helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know like Jordan did have one very transformative mushroom trip that I think was the last one he ever did. It was before we met, but it was just like I've been a very big proponent of like I read this I think it's an Alan Watts quote when I was very young. I read it when I was like 19 or something, and it was like maybe early 20s, but it was like, when you get the message, hang up the phone.
Yes. I
And
love that. Yep. Yep.
I did my first and ever only, I
Mm-hmm.
took LSD,
Oh wow.
right.
Yep.
It was the night before my brother's accident happened. So it was like a insane time
Wow.
of my life because I like took
Oh
acid and
wow.
ate a weed brownie at the same time. I was in college. I was
Wow. Of
like,
course.
"Woo, what can I
Yeah.
do?" And then
Yes.
like I had a really bad trip because it was scary. It was beautiful in some ways, but it was like it terrified me. I thought I was gonna die the whole time. And then
Yep.
the next day I was in this kind of state of like, what was that? And then Damon's accident happened, and it was just like my whole life.
Wow. Your whole,
And
yeah.
so for me, there's been this sense of like, I feel like the message I got from that showed me that the spiritual side of things I felt was real. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
proof to me of like
Yeah.
the material world is not all that there is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since felt like ever since then I've been like that was enough for me for my
You're
whole
good.
life probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep. Yep.
ever I've wondered like, oh, I wonder if taking a bit of something would help me like figure, but
Mm-hmm.
I just have this sense of like, I don't want to say it's cheating, but it almost
Mm.
registers to me as like, because I don't mean cheating, and that because I know that sometimes it's ever helpful, but it feels like a very risky way
Mm-hmm.
to do something that you could do in other ways,
Yeah. No, I hear you. Mm-hmm.
and it feels just sort of like,
Almost like bypassing,
well, I think most of
potentially.
the time for people
Most,
it is bypassing, right? But
yeah.
I think like in the way you're doing it, or if you do it
Mm-hmm.
so intentionally,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can have like this one, but I've never heard from anyone that they've had like many huge, like usually when I talk to someone, they had one trip
Kind
that
of
was
like
like
one
really
more. Yeah.
impactful, and
Mm-hmm.
then they've like tried to repeat it and it hasn't really been the same. Or
Yeah.
there's people who are doing it like every weekend or every month, or and I'm like,
I
you're like,
know.
what are you doing? This is like, I think,
Yep.
yeah. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
now I wonder what we open ourselves up to when we do
Right.
that. Like there's
Right.
so many possible bad influences, but
Yeah.
Anyway, I know it can be very useful, so I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, I just think you have to really
You know
know.
what you're doing and be careful. Yeah.
And I think like know if you're genuinely feeling like if it's really true
if
for you to
you're
do
if
that
you're
or if
really
it's
feeling called to do it, and I feel
yeah.
weird even saying that because it's similar language to other shit, but
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the only way I can explain it. Like if you intuitively feel like, and if you're like every weekend you're being called, okay. Like, you know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
if it's, and you know, and I'm not saying like, oh, I'm so perfect and I just did everything right. No, but like I read so much about it from people who really have worked with it in a medicinal way, and how much your, I think even Jordan had mentioned this when I heard him share about his experience, but like your set and your setting is so important. And
Yeah.
so like if you're being intentional, and also I'm very big on like, I mean there's so much science around like plants and them and absorbing the energy around them. I like studied for months and grew my own. You know what I mean? Like I,
Yeah.
it was just a very, and again, I'm not saying that to say I'm so perfect. I'm just sharing my experience, that I think all of those things were part of why I have had three really incredible experiences with Brian, not on a crazy high dose either, but just enough, and that it's been very helpful and healing for us. But it's not that I feel that's for everyone. In fact, I
Yeah.
honestly feel like it's more rare. And it just depends. And I think for me, especially with like how much trauma and how much guarding and protecting I've had to do, that the medicine of the mushroom almost helped, like, okay, like exhale and be able to kind of like breathe a little easier, and maybe, like I said, verbalize or access certain things that would just, my nervous system was having a harder time getting to.
Yeah.
So yes, anyone listening, please take it with a grain of salt, because I'm
Yeah.
not recommending that anyone just do them for any reason. I'm really
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
wouldn't either.
yeah. So, but beyond that, I really feel like the time, and I just want to encourage anyone listening, like, please be patient and know that as time passes, it will fade, not in a way that you're pretending it didn't happen or anything like that. But I also really, really wanted to touch on real quick. I don't know how much time we have, but I wanted to touch on,
That's okay.
okay, I wanted to touch on how you don't have to identify with what happened to you, and you don't have to carry an identity of being a victim for you to matter and for your life to matter. And like, sometimes we get, or we can get so lost in the weeds of reliving everything and unpacking every little thing that happened, that we then get stuck there. And like, to me, I, why do I want to stay stuck in the weeds of every little childhood trauma, or how did I get there, and every little thing, and try to figure it all out, when like I might as well have just stayed there if I was going to do that. And so
Yeah.
like I feel like in our world today, yes, having good therapists and having people that can help you, especially when you're had a very acute trauma and PTSD, yes, you need help. I'm not downplaying that. I needed a lot of help. And yet I am not staying stuck in that past and allowing it to overtake my whole life and my identity. And like, I could, that's a choice. And I also want to say that like, if that's where you're at, to anyone listening, valid. You have that choice. If that, you are allowed to stay there and to be upset about what happened for as long as you want. But I just want to encourage you that you don't have to. And there is another choice, which is where you do move forward, and you, not in a delusional fake way that you're pretending it didn't happen. No, it fucking happened, but it can stay back there, and you can focus on what you want to create forward. And so I just really want to encourage people in that, because I feel like it's this weird pendulum swing of like, our parents never talked about shit and everything was in the closet, and our moms were abused, or our aunts and our grandmas were abused, and they just took it and they never talked about anyone, and they had all this repressed trauma. And now I feel we're on this other side where we're all traumatized, and we're all this, and we're just like in this craziness of like staying stuck in that. And then we're also taking that and masking it with like, okay, now I need something else to latch onto. I need another group, another thing. I need to, change my identity, and I need to, like, we look for answers, whether it's in like I said, woke communities, LGBTQ, all these labels and title, like we're looking for these external things that like you don't need. And so
Yeah.
I'm just like wanted to speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have time? Because I don't have a
I
ton.
have time. I have
Okay.
no.
Um, okay, because there are so many things. I'm like, wait, I want to go back to, so there's a number of things. This is a very important point. So let me just, before we go into this piece, because I think this piece you just named is really important. I definitely want
Okay,
to go
yeah.
into this.
Hmm.
I also want to backtrack for a moment and say, like, I also, in my own experience, felt like there are different kinds of trauma, and there are different like ways that you experience that trauma that can make it so, like, for me, I had been through stuff like the loss of my brother, like all these deaths. Like, I thought that my early 20s were full of trauma, and they
Yeah.
were of a particular kind, right? Like, there was a lot of loss.
Hmm.
But I think that the reason that that the stuff I did helped me with, like, my brother's accident and all of that, like doing the breath work, that helped. Um, it didn't detach me from myself, like all those
Mm.
deaths, all this
Hmm.
loss.
Yep.
It was a world of a different experience to leave this cult. And what's crazy, like, it's crazy to me in a number of ways that, like, my story is nowhere near as bad as your story, right? It's not as like it's so, it feels so, I don't mean to say it like, sorry. I don't mean,
No.
I just mean to, like, I'm
Like.
not trying to compare them. I just,
Hmm.
what I mean is, like, I'm not trying to compare them as equal to one another.
Hmm.
But what's wild to me is, like, we shouldn't have such overlap in our stories. Like, why do I, in joining this online cult for 2 years, like, have had such similar experiences
Hmm.
to your story, which is so horrific in so many ways?
Hmm.
Like, and I say that to say that, like, I wasn't even abused. Like, I wasn't even one of the people that she yelled at. But
Mm.
what was so destabilizing for me when I left was, like, the deception of somebody that I thought I loved, like, not even existing, like
Mm.
pretending to be, like, just realizing that, like, something could pretend to be something it was not,
Yeah.
and that I could fall for that, and that I had changed so much, and it separated me from myself. Like, I didn't trust myself, I didn't trust God, I didn't even know if there was
Yes.
a God, I didn't,
Yep.
like, and that was so traumatizing, just that experience, that my nervous system was in such a state it had never been in this kind of state before, where,
Hmm.
like, and I, like, I've talked to people who have left that color, and they're like, there's kind of this feeling for some people of, like, why am I reacting so
Hmm.
intensely to this thing that, like, on paper doesn't seem like it would have been that intense? But for me, like, I couldn't be alone. Like, I would sit in the house, like, my nervous system was so shot
Hmm.
that I would literally, I was saying to Jordan the other day, like, I had moments that fall where I would sit in the middle of the day in our house, and I would suddenly become paranoid that, like, someone was in the closet and they were gonna kill me. Like, it wasn't rational. It was
Yep.
just like I was on hyper alert, and I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know why I was in a cult. I was
Hmm.
like, what's wrong with me?
What's
Like, I
going
didn't
on?
know. I
Hmm.
blamed it all on myself. And it was just such a, um, for now, it's been almost 3 years, and it's been a long process, like you said, of, like, the first year for me of that was just, I cried most of the time. Like, I was just like, I don't know who I am. I'm just gonna, like, sit here and cry mostly. Like, I had to stop doing pretty much everything. And then I had all these health issues which were so obviously connected to, like, you can't be in that kind of nervous system state and just be, like, perfectly healthy. It was so intense. And uh just recent, like, we went this past weekend to an amusement park.
Hmm.
We rode roller coasters, and, like, I did
I
all these
saw you on
crazy,
Jordan's story.
yeah,
It
yeah.
looked like you had so much fun. Yeah.
I had the best time. It was so much fun.
Amazing.
But for me, it was a really big deal
Hmm.
because nervous system wise, I haven't wanted to do anything like that in like 10 years.
Yep.
And especially since I left the cult,
Mm.
there was no chance I could have handled anything like that.
Mm. Hmm.
And so it was only like last Halloween that I started to feel like I was like, oh, maybe it would be fun
Hmm.
to go to a haunted house. And then I was like, I haven't thought that in a really
And
long
how
time.
long? Right.
And so there's
Oh,
been
that's
these
so
little signs of
interesting.
like, oh, my
Hmm.
nervous system is like coming back into this regulation where it
Hmm.
was a really big deal to like go to the amusement park and be like, I can be around all these people, all these
Can
crowds.
do all
I
this.
can
Yeah.
do these rides that send me up in the air and I can scream and I can be okay.
And I'm fine. Hmm.
Yeah, and I wasn't like shot. I was tired the next day, but I wasn't
Yeah.
like, I was
Naturally. But
okay.
yeah.
And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay. And so yeah, I wanted to note that for people because
Mm.
like
Hmm.
I thought I had been through a lot
Hmm.
and I had, but then like and you could say, I mean, I was definitely still to some extent dysregulated even after healing the anxiety stuff. Like after my brother's accident, I never got down
Hmm.
to the root. And part of the reason the cult was so traumatic also for me has been like in the healing of it, it's brought up a lot of stuff from my childhood I didn't even realize was there, and
Sure.
it all really connects.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's just it's astounding to me that something as small as the experience I went through could have affected
Impact
me
you. Yeah.
so intensely. And so I think it's like
Hmm.
that particular kind of uh like nervous system dysregulation and the separation from yourself and your own mind and like trying to find your way back is huge.
Hmm.
And it does I think take just
Takes
time.
time. Hmm. I think
Um
that's so interesting. Can I say something real quick?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's so interesting that you had the experience where like your nervous system, I don't know if it's not collapsed, but like basically you were not up for anything major. You had to just sit, cry. Like I think that's so
I think
interesting.
I was in total freeze.
Probably
Like I
frozen.
was just,
Yeah. Yes. A
yeah.
freeze response. Yeah. And what I find fascinating is that for me, when I left, and I think part of it was like I was so determined to like hold my job, get my own place, get it. Like I had so many, I was so like activated still. And so what I think is kind of comical, even thinking back, I was, I reconnected with my family, of course. My brother ended up moving back this way, and he told me about Spartan races. I was like, I'm doing 3 of them this year, and I did. Are you kidding? I did 3 Spartan races in 1 year in 2019, I think, or 2018. I have to look. And I feel like I had the opposite reaction of you, where like my body was so used to this high adrenaline mode that it was like seeking it out because it was like, we
Whoa.
aren't okay without this. So it was like,
Interesting.
I know. And that's why I was so fascinated listening to you because I feel like we had a flip flop experience where, like, for me, it happened almost opposite, where, like, thankfully not with the sexual promiscuity, which thankfully I say that for myself. I'm just grateful because that's another whole thing. But with the adrenaline and the, like, all that, I was like Spartan races. So I was like seeking these like high adrenaline like and I had a blast with my brother. We did 3 in 1 year and I got a medal and a
A
trifecta. Like,
trifecta?
yes, I did a trifecta. I did the hardest one in Vermont, which is on a ski mountain. It's the
Yes,
hardest
I
one in
know
the
all about
US.
that because
So you know it?
my sister does, I have an older sister. She's my half sister. She didn't grow
Okay.
up like in our
Mhm.
house, but we're very close. And
Mhm.
she's super into ultras, Spartan races, all
Yes.
this has been her thing.
Yeah.
But she just did this year the one in Vermont, I think the ultra version. So
The
like
ultra
the
version.
whatever,
Okay.
I think it was like 32
It's like a
miles
longer, yeah, yeah, yeah.
on that mountain,
On
but
that
it was a
mountain.
big deal for her because the first time
Yes.
she didn't finish, it was like too hard,
Okay.
and so I know that
Okay.
that mountain is crazy.
So I did it and I completed it. So anyways, I had a more opposite experience where like in the beginning I was like doing these high adrenaline things and then I feel like it was almost a revert like I built my website. I started my coaching business. I was like, I am taking my power back. And then I
Yeah.
feel like it was just like a crash that happened like years later almost, where it was like after COVID, after moving to Texas, I was like, whoa. And that's when I felt like I started gaining weight. Like my body was just like trying to recalibrate. So it was, I
Yeah.
just am sharing just because anyone listening, they may have, like, everyone is so different. And I
Yeah.
also wanted to say to what you were saying, the levels of trauma and not comparing. And I totally get that. And at the same time, I also get what you're saying, where it's like, I was raped by my pastors for years.
Yeah.
You weren't raped by, we're not
No.
comparing. It's just different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
just acknowledging that there was so many levels to what I went through. And yet the thing is, what you went through could have had just as much of an impact as what I had in the sense of like
On a
everyone is
nervous system
different in
level.
how,
Yeah.
yeah, and like what are all those things. So, anyways, I just wanted to share that, but I find that so interesting that like now you're able to like go to amusement park and think. And so I've even thought about. It's so funny you mentioned that. Cause I've even thought about like, and Brian's asked me like, do you ever want to go to amusement park? Do you want to go to And I'm like, I don't know if I'm up for it. And so like I feel like it's like I'm on my way back up now. Even like getting married, getting our house sold, which was a lot of stress, and like all those things, I feel so much better literally within the past 2 months. Like I probably look different from when I saw you last. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just feel better. So like I'm curious to see how that unfolds, but I'm so happy hearing you share that too, that you had fun at an amusement park.
Yeah, you know what was interesting was I had started to like crave it. And I've been
Mm,
wondering, I think that it's almost like Jordan and I were discussing it. I think it's like you know how little kids, the dad really has this role of like
like
picking the kids up and like swinging them around
throwing
and they
them.
scream and they're like, ah! Like the dad really has this role of helping the child like regulate their emotions. Like they
Yes.
learn to like, I can be really scared and then I come down and like I've been wondering if it's almost like my nervous system is relearning that
Yeah.
because what
Mm-hmm.
was interesting was like I had this desire to go to the haunted house back around Halloween, but then I like had a big I was it was not I had a big flare and I was like I can't it's too much
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of just like put it on the back burner because I didn't really think
Mm-hmm.
there was anything else. Like I don't know, I didn't think about it. It's like it's not Halloween anymore. But then just a few weeks ago now, I was in the car with Jordan and we were driving and he was like, "Oh, there's this new song. Like there was a new song he wanted to play me." And we were driving just for like 5 minutes. It was like a 5 minute drive. And he put on this song and for whatever reason, I closed my eyes.
Mm.
And then I realized when I closed my eyes that I don't think I've closed my eyes in a car in like 5
Wow.
years, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't something I knew that I consciously like wasn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did it, I was like, oh, like I haven't felt safe enough. Normally I'm like
Mm-hmm.
very vigilant. I'm like watching the road. I'm like, are we gonna die?
Yeah, yes.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like where my nervous system was at.
Yeah.
And so I closed my eyes and I like listened to this song and I just like the road was all like bumpy and turny and I just like started bawling my eyes out. Like I was just it was such a like relieving cry. Like I was just like, "Oh, wow. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to like let go and feel safe." And then I was like, "Let's keep doing like can we keep doing this? Like can we keep driving
Can
and
we
like
make
you
this
just
yeah,
drive and I close my
close my
eyes?"
eyes?
And so we did that a few times, and I was like, it kind of reminds me of being on a roller coaster. Like you don't know where you're going, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
this movement. And then I was like, I kind of think I want to go on a roller coaster. And then I was like, are there amusement parks in
Like,
Canada? Like I didn't
mm-hmm.
know. And he
If
was
that was
like,
a thing, yeah.
it's very small, by the way. I just want to
Okay,
say
yeah, it's a little
there is one. He was like, yeah, it's like a real amusement park. But then we got there, and I was like, this is so tiny. I was like, and then I was like, are all amusement parks this small? And I was just little. But no, I looked it up
It's
later.
probably
This
a
one is
small one.
15 acres, and the ones I grew up going to were like
Like
200 acres.
huge. Yeah. Yeah. America, yes.
America.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good size for this because they had
Yeah,
like multiple roller coasters. They had a lot of rides, and you could
they
do a
did.
bunch. We spent 6 hours there, and
Oh, fun. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was, and but what was interesting is like the weeks leading up to going, it was like a craving. Like you get a
Like you
craving
couldn't
for
wait.
food or something. I
Yeah.
was like, I want to be scared. Like I
Mm-hmm.
want to like scream and like go on this thing and be like, ah, like, and it was just interesting. I was like, I think it must be my nervous system like recalibrating.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so neat.
yeah, it's cool, right?
Wow.
But I also
Yeah.
relate to what you said with like now when I think back, I think what I did in response to my brother's accident in a lot of those years was like I just like I traveled. I didn't like stay put. I
Yep.
just like lived in all these different places and I like started my business and I did all this stuff and it was
Mm-hmm.
like adrenaline, 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 change, change. And I remember actually now as you were talking, I remembered that in the fall of 2019, I had like met Jordan and moved in with him
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly I was like depressed.
Mm.
Or I thought I was like there was
Mm-hmm.
this like
Mm-hmm.
weight of sadness. I was just so sad, and I went to see a therapist, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like I should be
Mm-hmm.
so happy. Like I met this man, I love him. We just moved in together.
Yeah.
I'm like rooting in one place, and the more we talked, she was like sometimes she was like it's like your system hasn't felt safe enough to let any of these feelings come up because you've
Come.
just been like going, 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 and so sometimes there is that big sort of like you said crash
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, I'm like, I can
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm safe enough to feel.
Yeah.
And I'd love to go into so the big piece I've been thinking this year, and I'm loving that I think a lot of people are like collectively, people are
Yeah.
realizing it, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that this focus on trauma and what's wrong with me and trying to fix things is so unhelpful. And what's been way more helpful is like joy and just being like,
Mm-hmm.
where can I find, like, can I have
Yeah.
fun? Can we do fun things? Yeah, and I think COVID was a big thing for people too, where like it kind of stripped a lot of joy from things.
Yep.
And even in
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, me going to the amusement park, I was like, this is so much fun. Like we need to have fun and like play. And that hasn't been a lot of our
Right.
relationship was like COVID and then
Mm-hmm.
getting really heavy and then like all
Yeah.
these health things and then
Mm-hmm.
you know, cool, all this stuff. It was like it's like can we just let's have some fun? And that I think is
Mm-hmm.
the more healing thing because I noticed for me, I think in retrospect the worst thing I did was like right when I left the cult was when I started having these weird physical symptoms.
Mm.
And then I like hyper focused on it because I had nothing else to do. I was like,
Mm.
I
Yep.
need to fix this.
Yep.
And I need to like fix my health. I need to fix
Mm-hmm.
what's gone wrong. And so I gave all of my energy and attention to like what's wrong with me.
Yep.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like the worst thing we can do.
Worst thing we can do. Yeah. I really agree. I mean, I've seen a couple people, and this is kind of my thought process behind it because I see someone, well, one person in particular that I used to know through church when I was younger, like pre all the craziness. And, this person is, um, created like a coaching business, which like that's fine, but their whole focus is like their childhood trauma and healing their inner child and like but that's all they talk about and it is the
Yeah.
most like depressive. I don't even look at it now, but I just found it so fascinating because I'm like, this is not it. Like this is not what is truly going to support people to stepping out of that and being and I think it's nuanced and a fine line because I understand where people are coming from where they I think it's so tricky in a sense because there people I think are afraid of um like if they don't acknowledge it, it means it didn't happen or like they're not you know what I mean? Like almost like they're invalidating how bad something was that happened to them if they choose to move forward. At least
Hmm.
that's my theory or it's kind of what I see. And it's like, no, that doesn't mean it didn't happen to you and it doesn't mean it wasn't bad. It just means that it doesn't have to control or dictate or you don't have to stay stuck in it. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
the thing that like defines you. And I think that's why when I shared with you as well of like I wrote an entire memoir and it's fucking incredible. And yet I've hesitated to publish it because I haven't wanted it to be like my identity and what I'm
Yeah,
known for this crazy story that happened to me. And yet I'm still navigating, like figuring out what that looks like, because I want people to know that like crazy things can happen to you. And I feel like a lot of people would relate to my story, what, through cults, through financial abuse, through sex. Like, I'm not
totally.
saying it touches every category, but it touches a lot. And so like I feel like it is important that we tell our stories. And something that I wrote in the what is it called? Intro to your book, prologue? I don't know. Whatever the intro wasn't it something I wrote in there was talking about how, I think how I phrased it was how shame breeds guilt, and guilt, I forget, oh, I can't remember how I wrote it out. It was inspired through something I had read from Brene Brown, but it wasn't an exact quote. It was basically around when we are shameful of things and we don't even talk about them, that just like gives them the power versus just like naming it and moving forward. And so that was also part of me wanting to share my story of like, I'm not ashamed of this because this is just a thing that happened. And
Mhm.
now I'm, creating something different. And it's very nuanced. It's not a black and white thing. So like I understand how it's tricky for some people, but I feel
Mhm.
like we can simplify it a bit. That's how, when I think,
How
but
do you feel toward, like, when you think back on all of that? Do you just feel neutral? Do you feel like upset that it happened to you? Do you feel grateful? Like, how do you
hmm.
feel toward it, if anything?
Yeah, so it really depends, right? Like sometimes I feel very neutral, and like how I shared with you in the last podcast, it was so interesting. I didn't feel like, because there's been other times where I've either been on a podcast or I've shared about something, and like the next night I've had like nightmares and I've been like upset for days, and I'm like, okay, maybe that was not helpful, etc. None of
Yeah.
that happened to me when we did our other episode. It felt very neutral. However, if it's in the context of like, like let's say it was like I said, like a tangible example, like going to the bank and my bankruptcy thing popping up because I had to file bankruptcy and that is still a thing that hasn't fallen off, or trying to do certain things that I'm literally still affected because of shit that like I didn't even do. So sometimes in those moments it's like it can feel frustrating or feel upsetting. So I think it's very nuanced, but there are times like if I really think about how, if I allow myself to really sit with the impact of what happened to me, it's literally astronomical. Like it has affected me so much. And things has not been easy. And I feel very behind in a sense because I was very stunted mentally, emotionally, physically, in every way. I don't feel stunted now. Like I feel very confident in who I am and everything now. But as far as like how my life would have looked without that, that can be upsetting to think about because it's like I, you know, I probably wouldn't have all of these, like you mentioned, physical scars, you mentioned all these things. So if I really, and that's where I share, that's kind of also my thought process of how it's not good to like dwell in the past because then you do feel really overwhelmed and you do feel like this is fucking horrible. Like, so I think that's where, generally speaking, as of lately, it's fairly neutral because I feel very confident in my life decisions now and who I am and where I'm headed. So it feels fairly neutral. But if I allow myself to really think about everything that happened to me or relive really horrific memories, then yes, it can be very upsetting. But I don't choose to like dwell on that.
When
Does that make
those
sense?
feelings come up, yes, when those
Mm-hmm.
feelings come up, uh, like if you feel angry or frustrated or upset, what do you do do you like just allow yourself to feel that for a bit? What do you do?
So I would say over the past year, I will do my best to create some type of, even if it's a time period, or give myself some time to actually feel whatever it is because I am very good at like compartmentalizing or not feeling anything. So I've tried to allow myself to feel whatever it is or be upset about it or cry about it or share with Brian or someone, etc. So that's what I've tried to do, is not, excuse me, not like push it down. So if I'm feeling upset about it, then I try to take time to be upset about it and then move past it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's not good to overly focus on it, but yeah, you don't want to push it away either because it's so important to like be able to feel things as they arise and like
Right.
accept them.
Yes, 100%. And I think especially in the beginning, in those first two, for me, 2 or 3 years where it was very intense, like if someone was telling me in that first year, like, well, you don't have to think about that, like, just focus on the future, I would have been like, what is wrong with you? So I just want to clarify, even what I'm sharing, especially if it's early on that you've either left an abusive situation, whether it was a relationship or a cult. I know we're talking about cults. Someone might find this from a cult, etc. I understand early on, and whatever that is for you, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 1 year, whatever it is where you're really trying to decipher everything. Yes, you may need to talk more about what happened and make sense of it for yourself. I'm more trying to reference not staying in that place. And I understand for everyone that might be different. So I don't want to put like hard timelines. I'm just sharing that it does get better with time. And assuming you are able to access some support and help, hopefully working with someone who is focused on helping you process through that and moving forward, not just someone who loves to sit in the weeds. Like,
Yeah.
so I just want to make that distinction that like you do need to feel and move through those things. And also I want to share that similar to me, even though I was gung ho with like finding a therapist, first one wasn't good, but like finding help, doing all these things, it was almost like I got through a lot of the acute PTSD in the beginning, but then it was a few years later where, like I mentioned, that kind of crash where I was like, oh my gosh, am I back at square one? So I want to share that it's not linear. It
Yeah,
can be very like up and down.
totally.
So I hope that I'm being clear because it's
Yeah, it
it's it's
makes
hard
total
to
sense.
explain.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because the emotional piece is really interesting to me because it's like we should have in an ideal world, when none of the cult stuff happened to you, like
Mm-hmm.
we should have learned as children how to just feel our emotions as they come
Right.
up and move
Yep.
forward. Like it should be an innate part of being a human. That's like very simple, just like being
Right.
regulated and all of that. But when you're relearning it as an adult, it's very tricky
Mm-hmm.
because it's like I feel sort of like my childhood was a lot of emotional suppression. Like it was just
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not allowed to have feelings. I'm not allowed to name them. I'm not allowed to
Yeah.
like I just have to please like you, people like
Yeah.
please
People
everybody
please.
else and
Mm-hmm.
and then I feel like I moved into the when I got into all the new agey stuff, it like
Mm-hmm.
swung the other way into your emotions are so important. And it was like anything you feel is so significant and you need to like really spend a lot of time there and it's like especially in the cult it was like romanticizing the down she called it oh you're just in the down and I'm like it was like normalizing these big crashes like highs and lows and it was like oh I'm just like in all these feelings and then I think it's been really challenging for me to figure out because then I did some somatic stuff last fall, where some of it maybe last summer it was helpful to a point, but then I started to feel like even in these sessions there was a lot of like going deeper to unearth more memories from my
Like you
childhood.
did sessions with someone? Like,
Yeah,
okay. Mm-hmm.
but it was like
Interesting.
we would
Mm-hmm.
bring up even more memories
Mm-hmm.
and then it would be like this big thing and it would bring up so
Mm-hmm.
much emotion and I kind of got to the point where I was like I don't think this is really helping either because it's like I don't know if I need to go back and remember like the more things I remember then the more I remember and the more pain I feel like the more
Right.
it's just like and then
How is
I
this
it just sort
helpful?
of
Yeah.
reinforces this like wow there was a lot of things that happened and a
Like,
lot of it's wrong
mm-hmm.
with me and oh all this stuff and I
Mm-hmm.
hear it in clients too like I hear people um I think sometimes it's good to learn more about yourself, but when it becomes just so you're so focused on your inner work and yourself and
Mm-hmm.
exploring all this stuff, it's like it leads to a bad place. It doesn't lead to
Yeah.
the healing of the, like, and that's why I've been so much more focused on joy. Where are we going? What are we doing? What are we creating?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that's the only way to heal, but it's still tricky. It's tricky to navigate the, like, okay, I want to like let my emotions be there and give them attention, but I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to like give them so much importance that they have like all
Right.
the attention and they're just like,
Right.
like there's this,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's that thing of like this should not be that hard. It should have just
I
been like
know. I
you
know. I know.
know?
Yeah.
But it's like yeah,
Yeah.
I am really grateful uh for all the health issues I've had in a way, because it's shown me a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like there were so many times throughout the years that I thought like, oh, I'm healed. I've like healed all this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I've done so
Mm-hmm.
much emotional work. I'm like, and now I'm like, I think this past year has been this like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
there was like all this
These,
that has
yeah,
been like subconsciously running
underneath.
the show that
Yeah.
I didn't even know was there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that the thing that's been the most helpful for me too has been this like joy.
Yeah.
Just like,
And
okay,
what is
because it's
going towards
about
that?
what we really want is to live in a place of safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like we want to feel like our when our nervous systems feel safe, it's like what do you do when you're healed and safe? Well, you go out and you live your life and you like do fun
Right.
things and you enjoy and you're not scared to do things because you feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
like how like even when I think about like teaching piano and when I would teach an adult versus teaching a child, it's so much easier for a 5-year-old to learn piano than teaching adults because I taught adults too. And so I think of it in the same respect of what you were saying that like how much easier would it have been if we learned this as kids? I firmly believe that, it would be so much easier. And something, I don't know, it's a simple analogy, but it has helped me in the past and maybe it will help someone where I've looked at those memories and or like intense emotions that come up that I don't want running the show. I've kind of this analogy because I'm very visual has helped me where I will picture it as I have a choice of like if my life is my car and if I'm in the driver's seat, then I'm the one dictating where we're headed, where we're going. And if these emotions or they could be anything like memories, the trauma from the past or emotions, those are kind of like the box I kind of put it in. I have a choice whether I allow them to take over. So like I imagine it as if those emotions or memories are like my kids. I can't get rid of them. They're part of my life, but they're in the back seat and they're strapped in. I am going to be a safe driver. I'm not going to allow them to get out their car seats and come in the front and steer the car. And so that's where I'm like, okay, if they're screaming so loud that we need to pull over and they're vomiting in my car and I need to like address it, then I'm going to address it, but I'm not letting them drive the car. So
Yeah.
that visual has helped me when I have felt like things are spiraling or it's been a while since I felt that way, but that's still been helpful with being on a path of recovery. And another thing, I don't know why car analogies have helped me so much, but like I think about the fact that like in a car, I feel like most people listening to this drive, your rear view mirror is like this big, right?
Yeah.
It's not very big. And yes, you might have two side mirrors that are also this big. But how big is your windshield? It's I don't know numbers, however many times bigger, okay? So
You
like
told me
you're
this last time, but I
did
love
I?
it, so I'm gonna let you
Okay. I'm
say
like,
it.
because I feel like it's such a good picture of like, okay, you can glance up there and look in the past briefly and it can give you a gauge, but like you have so much more room and space and like why not pay attention to like the bigger window in front of you of where you want to go. So anyways,
Yeah.
that's my
That
analogy. You
was
all heard it
that was
twice.
a part of your podcast that my dad also loved. He
Oh,
referenced that analogy
okay.
specifically. He's
Oh,
like,
I love
that
that.
was a really good analogy. I really liked it.
So it's
Maybe
so
he'll listen to
simple.
this
I love
again.
it.
Hi,
Maybe
Dad.
he will. Hi, Demetra's dad. But it's so simple, so maybe it will help someone. I don't know. But I just feel like there's so many ways that we can. I love how you said like looking towards joy. And again, I think it's just, I don't know where it stems from, where I feel like people are just obsessed with being a victim. I don't know exactly where it's coming from. And I'm not obsessed with that. And it
Do
does,
you
it's
ever
like,
feel it pop in? Like, do you ever feel like it's so unfair that this happened, or like any?
Oh, for sure. Like when I shared about like with where I'll feel super behind or I'll feel like
Yeah.
this,
So
I
those are like
will.
victim-y thoughts,
So,
right? Because I have
yes.
those too sometimes where I'm just like,
Yeah. This is,
why?
yep. No, I
Yeah.
have definitely felt it. It's not super prevalent, just being perfectly honest, but I definitely have felt it for sure. But
Yeah.
it's just, and I don't know again if that's part of my personality or just me being competitive with my own self of like I'm not gonna let this get to me. I don't know, but
But
it
people do
does.
really hook into it, right? It becomes their
Yes.
whole
Their
life.
whole identity. Yeah.
Oh
And
my
I think
gosh,
that's
it
one
makes
of
me so
it
angry.
it really bothers me and it's hard because I have people in close immediate family that are like that and I have a really hard time relating with them because it's such a strong energy that I just can't stand and so it can be challenging, but I just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Have I don't know if you've seen these people. I've seen them occasionally. I've almost wanted to do a whole deep dive into this, but I think it's just gonna piss me off. Like, there are people who are perfectly healthy who identify as disabled.
Wow.
So they they walk with canes, or they like ride in a wheelchair. And there's a
But they're
word for it. It's called
wow.
they call themselves something like wheelchair something. But it's like they identify with being disabled, and but they're not
But they're
actually
not
disabled.
actually. Mm-hmm.
And I cannot even tell you the rage that I feel. I don't know if it's because, like, I've had my own issues, or, like, my brother's in a
Your
wheelchair.
brother.
Like,
Yeah.
these things, I'm just like, what
What is
is
happening?
wrong with
What is wrong
you?
with you? Yeah.
Like, this, like, oh my gosh. It's
I
like,
think I feel that rage when I hear people that are like so victim over something that is like so minor comparatively, and I try so hard not to compare, but like there's a
yeah,
comparison, dude, you know what I
totally.
mean? And I'm
Yeah,
like, what?
yeah. No, I know what you mean. I've had
Yeah.
that a lot over the past couple of years where like someone will be like, I'm so sore. And I'd be like, I would be like not even able to walk. And I would be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could be sore. Like, like I would just, there's like, and
Right?
I think there's like a balance of it's good to let the genuine feelings come through, but
Mm-hmm.
like you said, not to let them make decisions or like lead the show or have any real, I think, because I've been so into Christianity lately, there's something they say like don't fear the devil, but like don't. Maybe you know the quote better than me. It's something like don't fear the devil, but like resist the
Mm.
devil, but don't
Mm-hmm.
fear him.
Oh yeah, there is a
And so
verse about that. Yeah.
yeah, and so there's
Okay.
like I think of sometimes of these like any like real negative thoughts or stuff. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
devil, like it's like this. And I think of it as it's like the thoughts can come in. Who knows where they come from? They could
Right.
come from you. Maybe they just come from
Mm-hmm.
the devil. I don't know. But like they
Mm-hmm.
come in and it's like they can be there and you can have them, but
Mm-hmm.
but you resist them. Like you don't like hold on to them
Right, latch onto
and
them
then
and
go, and then the next thing you know you're just
internalize.
like spending minutes like in this
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Like you like attach to the thought and you make it really important. As someone I
Mm-hmm.
worked with said something once that was like, he said thoughts. I think he said thoughts are just energy trying to become reality.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
And so it's like they're just
Yeah.
energy, like they're trying to become real, but they don't become real unless you're like, ooh, that thought
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is real.
Because we can think such crazy thoughts that come from who knows where, like random shit. Like what was that? And we don't have to actualize it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that was the last thing I wrote down actually was about the fact of finding out what you really think. And I know like we touched on it earlier, but like you have the right to change your mind and you have the right to be okay with taking your time to figure out what you really think and being okay with it changing. And also, I think I did mention this in the first podcast. If there's something that you still feel is true that you learned from your cult and it's still true, that's okay too. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to touch briefly on that. I think
It
we
can
said it
come
last
back,
time.
I think like it's good to throw it all away for a while.
Yeah.
And there's still Like, yeah, I think when I told you I threw out all of the language, it was funny because it got to a certain point where, like, anything that this woman had ever said, I was just like,
Yeah.
no, don't say that.
Nope.
I want to hear. And so, like, sometimes Jordan would use a phrase or, like, say a word, and I would be like, that's a cult phrase, or, like, that comes from that. And he would be like, no, it doesn't. I heard it before I ever met her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't care. It
It's
reminds me of her. So don't, like, I don't, but I had to sort of, now I've lost. It's interesting the way our minds really can like reframe, because now there are certain words that they no longer like trigger me. They just feel like words.
yeah,
And
yes.
so like
Same
people
thing.
can
Yep.
say them and I'm no longer like, that
Like
means that
that's the cult.
thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, like one of them is, she used to say often like, oh, the energy comes through me, like the energy. And so Jordan would say something like, oh, like if creative energy comes through you, and I'd be like, that's a cult thing.
You're
He's like,
like,
it's not a cult thing. He's like,
mm-hmm.
so many people have said that independently.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it used to like register to me as the cult, whereas now
Right.
like someone could say that and it just
It
doesn't
would
like.
just, yeah, yep. You know,
I'm
I
sure you
I
really
relate
know
to you
why.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep. 100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Okay, well, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but we've been going for like 3 hours, so I feel like we should. Is there anything you want to finish with for anyone? Is there anything on your bullet points we didn't
The only
like?
one, which is quick, is that someone had asked me, and I didn't know, maybe anyone else might have been curious, but it's not my story to go into, but the little boy, my best friend's baby, he is okay and he's doing well. He's in school. He's very smart. And so I just wanted to share he's gonna be fine and he's doing great. So I wanted to close that little loop.
Oh,
But yes, so beyond that, I feel like my bullet points were met. I just am very happy that we got to share more about kind of how you get into cults and then also coming out of it. And I really hope this helps even like one person to kind of make sense of, even if they're educating themselves or so they can be a support to someone else or even for their own self. So
yeah.
I really appreciate you having me for a follow-up conversation.
I'm so glad that you reached out because I was like the most excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to ask you a lot more questions, but I don't think I would have reached out because I would have been like, I already like,
Ready?
you
Yeah.
know, you already gave me 3 hours of your time. I don't like,
No,
but
I
I know it will
appreciate
be
it.
so helpful for
Hmm.
so many people for sure. Um,
Yeah. And
yeah,
if anyone, I guess I didn't write this down, but if anyone has to testify in court, that is a whole nother conversation. But just, if you have to go through that, you're not alone. It was very crazy leading up to it for me, meaning it was such a long time. And then all of a sudden I had to revisit everything. So just want to share from the experience that even if that's part of what you have to go through, you'll get through it and you'll still be able to move forward. So yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So
thank you so much.
thank you for your time and thank you to everyone listening.